And good evening. Welcome to Thursday, February 11th, 2021, Holliston School Committee. Pursuant to the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Paragraph 20, as well as the Select Board's emergency order dated March 16th, 2020, the Holliston School Committee will be using remote participation for this meeting. The audio of this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the HCAT webpage within 24 hours in accordance with the Governor's emergency action requirement of keeping the public informed of actions during this meeting. I ask that all participants please state your name for identification purposes each time you speak throughout the meeting. At this time, a roll call attendance will be taken. Mr. Morton?
Present.
Dr. Savard? Catherine, we didn't hear you, sorry. There you are. Mrs. Listevnik?
Present.
Ms. Hanstead?
Present.
Ms. Koshin?
Present.
Ms. Naborski?
Present.
Mrs. Raffi? Present. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to participate remotely.
Moved by Dawn.
Seconded by Cynthia.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Cynthia. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
We can't hear you, Catherine.
Yes. Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. Great, thank you and good evening. So this evening we are going to jump around the agenda a little bit. I'd like to welcome our building administrators, our central office administrators, our student rep, and we are going to jump right into communications. So Elise, did you want to share out some information and news?
Yes. So as many of you know, the high school just finished up our first semester with finals, and we just want to thank everybody who worked really hard to make remote learning and hybrid happen, because it was definitely a roller coaster of a first semester, but we have gotten through it and we're on to semester 2. And in a similar vein, the midterm grades for seniors are going to be sent out to any colleges that are looking for those tomorrow at 10:15. And this week was the first week that the student advisory leaders had their freshman advisory, so they got to meet for the first time this week, and everybody had a lot of fun with that. So our winter sports ended this week, and the fall 2 season is going to start up soon. Especially unified basketball is super excited to get started, along with football and some other fall sports. The one acts will be virtually released on YouTube on February 26th and 27th. And so we have a message from Generation Ratify, which is a new organization at Holliston High School. And they describe themselves as the national youth-led movement to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment and include women and people beyond the gender binary in our Constitution. And it is run by sophomore Emma Grace, and they're participating in a statewide project called ME and MA, which advocates for menstrual equality in Massachusetts public schools. And one last note is that Teacher Appreciation Week is on March 1st, and the Student Council is working on making COVID-safe snack baskets for teachers during that week.
Great, thank you. Well, congratulations again on getting through semester 1, and here we go semester 2. It's gonna fly by, so enjoy it as much as you can.
Thank you.
And Elise, please, tonight at any time, when you need to run and just give us a wave. Thanks for joining us tonight. We don't have any public comment from the administrators. Anyone from the school committee? Anne Louise?
Just a quick acknowledgement to Elise. First of all, to all the students for getting through this year. It's a challenge, but you rose to the occasion, and I know it's been hard, but congrats on that. And you're almost there. You're halfway through this year, and I'm sure looking forward to life hereafter. But I really did just want to acknowledge you and tell me the name of the organization. I can't, you were so fast, but the new women's organization at the high school, what's it called?
It's called Generation Ratify.
Generation Ratify. Okay, I want you to know, as it's so many of the women here on this call, I graduated from women's college, and we thought we were achieving that solidly 35 years ago. So the fact that we're still fighting for it isn't really ideal, but at least it's nice to see that the torch is being held up by your generation. So good luck to you on that.
Yeah, and that's Emma Grace who's spearheading that. So she's really really working hard to make that happen.
Great, nice to hear.
Anything else, Anne Louise?
No, that was it. I just want to give her a high five on that. Or Emma.
Lisa?
Hi, just really quickly, CPAC is one of my liaison commitments, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and I just wanted to report out that they were able to give back to the community, both families and teachers, $1,781 based off of their pumpkin extravaganza fundraiser in the fall, which I know was really well attended. They were able to take in they did a very simple grant process, and parents asked for things like some at-home PT equipment. Somebody asked for a weighted blanket. And on the school side, we were able to get some clear masks for students that a speech and language pathologist had asked for. And then an OT, an occupational therapist, had asked for funds to set up a sensory pathway. So just wanted to say yay to the hardworking parents of CPAC for making that happen. And kudos to everyone who went to the fundraiser and also helped make that happen. So thank you.
Great. Anyone else? I just want to announce that the townwide PTO meeting is scheduled for February 23rd at 7:30 p.m. It is via Zoom. So check out the PTO page for more information and to get the Zoom link. And with that, did the others have anything else? No? Okay. And the administrators already shared with me that they did not have anything for public comment, and we do not have anyone registered. So we are going to jump right into old business. And Susan will start with the superintendent's COVID update.
Before Matt gets started, because I do want to give Matt the opportunity to talk about athletics, which I know everybody's excited to hear about. I did not want to forget a couple of things that I don't have presentations on. And one of them is a very exciting thing is we still remain in the yellow, as Chief Cassidy shared with us just recently. So 3 weeks straight, let's keep up the good work and even get to green. The longer we can stay healthy, the better chance we have of sports and opportunities for our students. So that's really exciting news. With that, because things are going well at Holliston Public Schools, and I've had, I think, one case this week and very few cases overall in the last 2 weeks of positive cases, and still no transmission at school. So we are working hard to see, just with the seating arrangements we have right now, still at 6 feet, are there more students we can get back? Each term you've heard our principals are sending out surveys and saying who wants to come back that may have been remote and is looking to go back into hybrid or in person. So that changes from semester to semester. But in addition, I've asked them to look at every available seat during the week if there's a couple of seats in a classroom based on the hybrid, and we can get more kids in 5 days a week. They've really been reaching out to families and prioritizing to fill all of those empty seats. And we went with our high needs special ed population. We looked at our ELL students. We looked at students that are struggling academically and social emotionally. So there's been a tiered approach. I know a lot of parents have had questions about it, and we absolutely want every child back in person, but at 6 feet, we cannot do so. But given that we do have some seats, the principals have been very creative, and we've been working harder and harder to try to make sure we can get that information out to people. I did talk to our administrators today about at term 4, if we have some students that can shift again, could we bring some more students back? So we have some creative ideas that we're working on to bring more and more kids back, given the constraints that we're under. If we could ever get to 3 feet, that will open up even more seats. But right now, we're really trying to prioritize by needs of kids. And I just to clarify, because I can't be specific for confidential reasons for each student, but when I was a teacher and if we had extra enrichment opportunities after school for academic support for students, the principal would come to me and say, Susan, who would you recommend that needs a little extra help based on anecdotal data, based on, you know, working with the parents and all of that. And then I would make my recommendation of the 5 or 6 kids that I could give extra help to after school with some PTO funds or otherwise grants that we had. In COVID, there's no different to that. Teachers are involved in that process. At Miller, Mr. Keim has been working with teachers and guidance counselors and asking them to indicate which students that they are working with that are struggling within their classes, if they have empty seats, and the same at Adams. David and Jess have been working with all their staff and Nicole to see if we have some seats, who are the priorities right now. And anytime a seat opens, they go down that list of priority needs. So I want people to understand that a lot of work, time, and effort goes into that. They take this very seriously, and they really try to prioritize by needs of kids. The only other people that have been offered opportunities like this are educators. If you recall, early on during our reopening plan, the Department of Education asked us to be able to try to prioritize educators, because if the educators had needs for their students and could get their students back 5 days a week, then they might be able to be there for their students in other districts. So we first prioritized educators that work for us so that we could get them in school to work with students here. And if we had extra seats available, some of the educators that are Holliston community members but work in other towns were also offered those opportunities. So there's no perfect science to it as far as how many we can offer. It really depends on how many seats alphabetically are available. But I wanted people to understand that because we really did prioritize and continue to prioritize the needs of students. And I'll just pause there for a minute. Annalise, I thought you might have had a question. I don't know if you still do.
Sorry, thank you, Susan. I wouldn't have raised my hand. I thought you were almost done. Sorry about that. So just for clarification, when you talk about trying to get a few more kids back into those spots, I think that's wonderful. But are we really talking about elementary level? Because you said get more kids in 5 days a week. And of course, the middle and high school are not 5 days a week. So
Right. Well, at Miller, only 3rd grade has the opportunity to be all 5 days a week. However, there were some extra seats in some of the 4th and 5th grade classes. So Mr. Keim and Erica Linares both worked together to prioritize any students, and they met with each of the teachers that had any seats available to see which kids within each class might be able to come in 5 days a week. So they were able to offer some of that. And the same at the middle school, even though it's a hybrid model, there still are some seats in different classrooms.
I imagine so. So, okay, that's helpful clarification. As you begin to look at this, and I recognize this may not be possible or premature, or it could just throw a big fat wrench into the whole operation. But I think we know so much more now than we did before. Is there any opportunity to consider bringing kids back at the upper schools for the full day when they are in? So don't change hybrid, but give them the full day in school, if at all possible. And I know you're not prepared to answer that question right now, but.
Well, the one part I can say to that is with our agreement, when we reopening plan, we agreed not to alter the schedule this year so that would require some discussions with our teachers. We'd have to go back and discuss how that would happen and when that would happen. So that is another piece to that puzzle. And the same, if we went into 3 feet, we would have to have that opportunity to discuss. I mean, I'm hoping that we get to the point that the state is expecting us all to do 3 feet. They're encouraging it, but they haven't, the CDC hasn't said that yet. So I'm waiting that news as well. And that will maybe potentially give us some more opportunities.
Well, if it's, there's safety first, and then there's operations, feasibility, busing, and all of that. But, every minute, every hour we can get the kids back into school, I think is worth considering. So if you think it's feasible in some fashion or form over the, next semester, I think it'd be worth looking at, even if it means going back and having that discussion.
Yes, and we did get news today that they're changing the guidelines for the buses as well, and we're going to have the opportunity to get more kids on buses, so that will play into this as well. So the more we have that, we're just getting that information, so I don't want to get too far into that. We've had time to analyze it, but next time we meet, I'll probably have more information to share as well.
Super. Thank you.
So I'm going to move on and let Matt share the information he's been having. And again, hot off the press, day by day, he's getting more information about sports as well. So thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Susan, before Matt
Oh.
starts, I'm sorry, you missed Dawn had her hand up.
Sorry about that, Dawn.
Dr. Kreska, I just had one additional question, and that was in terms of, I know a survey had gone out at the middle school level about families who might want additional days. And I guess my question is, now that we have been through this for almost, I guess, for half the year, we started off with stringent cohorts at the 4th through 8th grade levels, but not so stringent, I guess, at the high school where kids had 3 different classes. So we did see a mix of kids. Given what we know now at the high school where we did mix kids, right? They had different kids in each of their 3 classes and everyone has a 4th remote class. We haven't seen in-school transmission. Have we given any thought to mixing kids at the 4th through 8th grade level? And by that, I mean getting more kids in for more days. So instead of some kids going 2 or 3 days a week and some kids going 5, is there an opportunity here to have more kids go 4 days? It's just a thought, something to think about. If we could be flexible with those open seats, we might be able to get someone, maybe cohort B, there's no places for them on cohort A, but there might be a way for more kids to go 3 or 4 days instead of 5 days versus 2 or 3.
Yeah, and all ideas are on the table. And actually, we did meet today and had that discussion. In fact, Mr. Jordan has, and they are currently mixing cohorts in the manner you're speaking, because if you're a 5-day-a-week student that was in cohort B, you're now coming with cohort A and B. So yes, because we know that is safe to do so, we've gone that route. And also at the middle school, they're looking into their safe spaces that have larger spaces. So they might not be able to fit every child into their existing classrooms, but they might be able to have those kids come in person in the larger areas. They'd still be remoting in, but they'd be able to physically be in the building and be supervised for their days when they would normally be remote. So that's another opportunity that they're working on right now and we'll be able to address very shortly. So I did ask also Mr. Keim for 4th term, he's going to be surveying similar to the middle school to see what interest we have so that if and when more seats become available or we make shifts, he'll have that list ready to go. And possibly some of the kids that might be coming in for term 3, 5 days a week, we could rotate and maybe switch for term 4 to get some of that equity that you're talking about and get some additional opportunities for students. All right, if there's nothing else for that at the moment, I'm going to turn it over to our athletic director.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here again tonight to talk about the upcoming Fall 2 season. We are heading towards the end of our winter season this weekend, our last set of games. So it's been great to see us have a successful winter season. And it's just really been great to get the athletes and coaches out there competing. So I thank you all for your support during the winter season. And I just want to give you a brief overview of what the plan is for the Fall 2 season, which starts on Monday, February 22nd. This is an evolving process, as Dr. Kuska mentioned. I think in the last week, I've been in 7 athletic director meetings, meetings with the athletic directors and the Tri-Valley League principals, or MIAA meetings. So everything is evolving, roster limits and required number of people on a practice surface. That's all stuff that we are getting emails by the day. The EEA and the MIAA has met frequently over the course of this week. So we have a basic plan that our league has been, that we've been planning for February 22nd. I've been dealing with our coaches. A lot of information will be finalized next week. Coaches will be in touch with their students on their team. We're going to have to get all the final registration numbers and really decide what the practice schedule looks like, who's going to what practice when we have to split groups. So I just really want to stress that, stress everyone's patience and that it really is just evolving, by the hour sometimes. So what I'll just go through is the plan that we've come up with in our league, and then we could have some discussion after that. So I'm going to bring up. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me just go back to the beginning here. So I just have a statement here about thanking everyone for their patience. With the addition of the Fall 2 season, we're working hard as a league to deal with the logistics of having a sport like football in the middle of the winter, offering sports that have limited venue availability, and being creative to give the student athletes the best season we can. With that being said, there's still currently a lot we don't know and we are working through. As always, thank you to the parents and athletes for their patience as we work through the logistics. We'll continue to follow all the guidelines set forth by the EEA, DESE, the MIAA, Holliston Public Schools, and the Tri-Valley League. Our main focus is and always will be the health and safety of all of our student athletes. So the Fall 2 sports that have been approved by the Board of Directors are cheer, which is sideline cheer for this season, football, swim and dive, indoor track, unified basketball, and volleyball. The start date of the season, so that's tryouts, practices, is Monday, February 22nd. The season runs as late as April 25th. Per the MIAA, there are no postseason events. Registration had been open last summer, so we carried the registration over and we reopened it last week. So we're just encouraging people to get registered. We have quite a few people registered already, but numbers are going to be very important for myself and the coaches as we plan things over the next week. Just a brief overview for cheer, what that's going to be in the Fall 2 season. It's going to be sideline cheer, which is game day only, for home games only, for football games. They're going to be positioned in the end zone, spaced 10 feet apart. That's different because we're going to need the full length of both sidelines for the football teams and possibly even 2 rows of football players. So the cheerleaders are going to be stationed in each end zone. There will be no stunting or a halftime dance routine. The practices will take place indoors and outdoors, but we will try to have them outdoors as much as possible. The competitive cheer season has tentatively been moved by the MIAA to the spring season. So we hope that takes place, that Fall 2 is just sideline, and then the spring season is competitive cheer. As of right now, as of this afternoon, we had 12 student athletes registered for fall cheer. Football is going to be a 5-game season. We're going to play every school in the TVL Large one time. Games will start the weekend of March 19th. Still hasn't been decided whether that will be Friday or a Saturday. Practices will also take place indoors and outdoors, following all the EEA and MIA guidelines for max participants on a playing surface. We will have them outside as much as possible. The sport is going to be played outside, so it will be our goal to get them outside as much as possible. I've talked to Keith Boudet about we are monitoring the field and what the snow situation is like on there, because that's obviously a big issue starting the season in the winter. Been having frequent conversations with athletic directors from other towns about what the best way is to remove snow from the turf, whether it's a snow blower or some towns use the DPW will use their sidewalk snow blower plow. So those are conversations Keith and I will be having over the next week. There's currently a limit football roster to 45 players per team, but that is also subject to change per the TVL. It could be lower than that. And for practice purposes, no more than 25 people on one playing service at a time. We'll do our best to keep all levels of teams as separate as possible, because if there is a case, we don't want 2 or 3 teams to have to shut down. And in football, all players will be considered close contacts if there's a case on our team or a case in a game with a visiting team. As of a few hours ago, we had 52 student athletes registered for football. Swim and dive, we have moved to the Fall 2 season along with Ashland and Hopkinton in our league. Keefe Tech, and the reason was Keefe Tech was not available this past winter. It is still not available for use at this time. I've secured the Milford High School pool for 3 days a week and the Kingsbury Club in Medfield for 2 days a week. The meets will be virtual. We'll have a minimum of 4, but we're still working on the schedule. With the virtual meets, it's very easy for us to add a 3rd team in to just get their times as a non-league meet. And I do have a list of other schools in the state that are swimming and diving in Fall 2. We'll follow all the same guidelines, as well as maximum participant rules at respective pool clubs. I have a meeting with our coach tomorrow morning at Kingsbury Club with their staff, and then at the Milford pool next week with their staff, just to get a lay of the land and see how things will work, because they're both different facilities from what we're used to using. Swim and dive program is a co-op program hosted by us with Medway as our guest. As of a few hours ago, we had 20 student athletes from Holliston and 3 from Medway signed up. Indoor track also is going to be taking place during fall 2. Practice will take place indoors and outdoors as much as possible. It's not that much different from what they do in the winter anyways. They'll get outside if they can. It will be a 5-meet season. We'll compete against all the TVL schools who are also running track in fall 2. Currently, there are no indoor venues available for meets, but we're monitoring the situation closely. There's the chance that we could do virtual meets. The TVL athletic directors, this is one of the things we're going to meet on next week and try to devise a plan for the track meet season. We may push the track meets further out into March, similar to football, in the hopes that there's better weather and that we could run some outdoor meets. But we'll be working on that. As I said, that's with everything evolving, we'll start our practices and see what we can come up with for a meet schedule. Same thing, as I mentioned, the turf. And my conversations with Keith is the track as well, and we'll just continue to monitor that. As of a few hours ago, 21 student athletes signed up for indoor track. Volleyball will play a 10-game schedule, play every school in the TVL Large twice. Practice will be indoors, following all guidelines. This will be similar to basketball, which we just ran over the course of the winter season. Rosters will be limited, 12 to 15 kids. That final number is to be determined by the TVL. We'll follow all the guidelines regarding practices and games. And as of a couple hours ago, 43 student athletes were registered. Unified basketball, which was a fantastic addition to our athletic program last year, will be a 4-game season against a few other schools in the Tri-Valley League that also run unified basketball. We 1 to 2 practices indoors a week. We could possibly split that up for smaller groups. Unified basketball follows all the MIAA basketball COVID guidelines. We're in the preliminary stages of planning that schedule right now with the other Tri-Valley schools. We're trying to, whereas last year the Special Olympics made the schedule and grouped us with schools further away, we're trying to keep it in our league like we are for the other sports. And as of this afternoon, we had 7 student athletes and partners registered for unified basketball. Something else I wanted to touch on was middle school sports. There's going to be no middle school sports run by TVL schools during fall 2. Our league will start the discussion for the spring season once the fall 2 season is underway. We're hoping we can offer outdoor sport opportunities in the spring, whether that's cross country or something intramurals. Dawn and I had even exchanged emails where we had mentioned maybe setting outdoor volleyball nets up on the old flag school property. But we'll do everything we can to be creative, find opportunities for the middle school kids to play, and hopefully we'll have some opportunities in our league as well for them to have that option. And we're just preaching health and safety, patience and adaptability, wear your mask, distance yourself, wash your hands, and go Panthers. So that's it for the presentation.
Thank you, Matt. And I just wanted to call attention to the fact that that you did, you managed the winter season really well, and you went ahead and tried to make lemonade out of lemons. You hired photographers for the senior nights for each team. So I just wanted to call attention to that and thank you for that. I think that was appreciated by the families and just well done. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Anne-Louise?
Yeah, Matt, I just want to thank you. First of all, you always give a very clear presentation, and that is so appreciated. And more to the point, the content. I know there was a ton of work that went into this, and the amount of time coordinating with, EA, DESE, MIA, and the Tri-Valley League, never mind the other coaches you interact with, and all having to absorb all the safety regulations around this.
the fact that we are able to get so many teams back on the field, and if I did my count correct, like well over 125 students have registered to play sports this season, and that's huge. So I want to thank you for that. There's a lot of effort that goes into this. I did want to, I don't know, this is more of a question for Susan, but in the spirit of keeping the kids safe and just monitoring this, I'm still wondering if testing our, maybe it's varsity, I don't know what it is, but testing our athletes that are in particular, I don't know, some sports I think are more at risk than others, but testing them before games with other districts isn't worth considering. I understand there's cost, I understand all of that, but in the world of trying to be cautious, but also at the same time do it so that we can continue to keep the programs running, is that worth considering? So has that come up with any of the other coaches, Matt? The idea of testing athletes?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know of anybody, at least in our league, who is planning that, or if they are, I haven't said anything yet.
Okay. All righty. All right. Well, thank you.
Cynthia, you had your hand up?
I did. Thanks. Thanks, Matt, for that great presentation. Do you mind sending that to all of us just so we can have that as a reference? And then my question for you was about spectators. And can you just refresh our memory as to what the rule about spectators is for how we had it in the fall and how we, plan to have it for this fall 2 season?
So how we had it in the fall, for our outside, we only had outdoor sports. So we had 2 adult spectators per home participant. And for the winter, we had no spectators. And in the fall too, we'll have football outside, possibly indoor track outside. And then we will have multiple sports indoors.
Thank you.
And Louise.
So it is varying by sport and by season. So we did have spectators in the fall, and that was predominantly outside spectators. And in some cases, we had them in the winter.
So, yeah, it goes back to the outside versus inside. Because we have not had any visitors in the building, we talked about to mitigate in the building, we've not opened up our buildings to anyone. And for equity, even for example, IEP meetings, parents are doing that virtually. So we've been very careful to not change that protocol. And we haven't gone forward with any decision for inside sports at this time for that reason, because we would be breaking our protocol only for sports. I mean, I'll give you an example. I know Dr. Slaney and I were talking this morning about how sometimes, I was in the building visiting at Placentino, and we have little ones, 2.5, 3-year-olds coming in for evaluations. And she or someone will actually walk the student in, and it's very challenging for these little ones who've never been in a building before. So it's a tricky thing right now to then say we'll open it up for sports. We're not ruling it out at this point, but we haven't determined whether we can do that for inside sports yet.
So I totally understand that, although I do think it's worth taking another look at. But my question goes to the heart of the matter. When it's not a school-based or campus-based facility, that protocol seems to me overly restrictive. So because, I completely understand we are trying to create that bubble in our own environment where kids are coming to school every single day. But if it's not a school-based facility, can we not take a closer look at what those facility protocols are, the size and the nature of the facility, and consider possibly allowing some small portion of spectators to attend?
Yeah, and I think that's what we've talked about already, is that, again, we just got so much information the last few days, so we haven't had time to digest it all. But I believe, Matt, you said that March 19th is the first time we would be having games. So we have time to talk about that more before that time.
So let me just jump to the heart of the matter. What about hockey?
there's one more game left to this season, and Loring Arena is not a campus facility where we risk bringing potential germs into the schools. So we've heard a number of requests from the hockey parents about the ability to watch that one last game happening this weekend in an arena that is multiple times the size of our field house. The temperatures are low. There's a vast amount of space, and the spectators are completely shielded from the players because of the nature of a hockey rink. And finally, they have very strict protocols in place. And we're looking at a very limited number of spectators. So I'm just wondering, given that that's a completely isolated and different scenario than allowing spectators to come into our own field house or campus, is that something that we could consider?
And the last time we talked about this, I believe, if we were still in the red, if I recall, I can't remember now, but I think we were. And at that time, I think the school committee voted to maintain our protocols because there were two concerns. One was obviously the safety mitigation that we talked about. The second one was the equity, because we couldn't open it up for all sports and all students within that sport. I think it was just seniors at that time that we were asked to consider. So if school committee wants to change that, I believe it was a vote at the time or more of a discussion. I can't remember it exactly, but that was the last meeting that we had.
I was not at the meeting of the 21st, nor did I see this in the minutes discussion, but I wasn't aware that that discussion was had.
It was a very brief discussion, but I would support opening this back up tonight for discussion.
I would like to say that when we had this discussion last, the numbers, and I think we made the best decision we could make at the time, and we did bring it up for discussion on two occasions. I think when we first voted about sports in December, and then at either the December or January meeting. But at that time, we were in the red. The positivity rate was in the 6%. As of today, so on January 7th, the 2-week look back, it was a 6.2% positivity rate in Holliston. On January 14th, it was a 6.39% positivity rate. As of today, the data that was posted this evening, we're at 2.69%. If we look back over the last 14 days, and we're going into our third week of coming out of the red, being in the yellow. So I think it would be reasonable to flex and reflect on the fact that we're now in the yellow, the numbers are down. This is not a school facility. This is Loring Arena. I think, in fact, when Holliston plays Hopkinton, but it's Hopkinton hosting at Loring, the Hopkinton folks are allowed in as spectators. So it is something I'd like to talk about. Stacey, you're shaking your head no. So the information.
I think you had some misinformation. So Hopkinton, they don't play, when they play us at Loring, they do not have there were no spectators. So all of our winter sports had no spectators. The other districts respected our protocol.
When our teams played other districts, did they have spectators?
Matt is saying no.
So when Hopkinton played other districts, not Holliston, are you indicating that they were respecting our policy when playing us? Makes sense. But is Loring allowing spectators in other instances? And if so, have they had any disease transmission that has been traced back to the arena among spectators?
So the only other high school team that uses Loring as their home in our league is Ashland, and they also have a no spectator rule. While Loring does have a spectator rule, more so for the youth hockey, they don't want spectators because their facility, they don't have enough staff to manage it.
Are there spectators at any of the hockey games happening at Loring Arena? Right. What am I going to talk about?
For youth sports, yes.
And so there are, and there's been no transmission.
I don't have that answer because we don't track that data for youth sports. We don't have access to that information.
My concern, though, is that this is an inequitable situation where there's one game left for the winter season. What about the other teams who didn't get the same opportunity?
Well, I think
Playing in a different
that's-
venue.
What?
They're playing in a different venue. Sorry, Anne-Louise, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I mean, I think the risk profile of every venue is different, and that's a challenge we have to evaluate by sport. And it's tough. It's a difficult situation, and I guess it goes without saying that the pandemic has been defined by inequity, and where we can right the wrong. I think if we have the opportunity to do that, I'd rather do that. That's just my personal opinion, but I understand that. But I don't want to punish some people because we weren't able to do it for others.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is a lot of us, I think we've all been on these emails. We're hearing from parents who have made a really strong case for themselves that, it's a huge arena. They're able to socially distance. They'll wear masks. And, it's hard to say no to, parents who want to see their kids play for the last time. And I don't want to say no if we're not on solid footing, if there's, basically no risk or very, very low risk of transmission in a setting that big. I would hope that parents in other sports would understand that, every venue is different, and every situation is different. And I would hope we're not opening up a Pandora's box if we entertained this idea, but it seems really, as a parent, it seems, it's really hard to say, we're asking you to do this just because this is the rule.
We're in a global pandemic, and we didn't.
Well aware of that.
Thank you.
But we didn't do this for the girls' hockey. I have this is for me.
For gymnastics either. I mean, they're limited too.
Good at all. Mm-hmm. Catherine?
I was actually going to bring up the girls' hockey as the equity issue. It makes me uncomfortable to make an exception for one team for one game at the end of a season when we can't offer it to the female side of the same sport. Mm-hmm. It makes me uncomfortable to. I understand what people are saying about equity and inequity, but I think by doing this, we could actually be creating the inequity by
I agree
by not having the ability to give this opportunity to the girls as well.
When was the girls' last game? Has it happened?
Girls, their last game is this weekend. I don't know the location. Gymnastics has been over for a week. Girls basketball has no more home games left. Gymnastics did not have spectators at their meet.
Where do they hold their meets, Matt?
Elite in Ashland, the home ones.
The girls hockey, Matt, where does girls hockey play? Can we open it up to spectators for girls hockey to address?
Let me clarify though. They are on the Ashland co-op, correct, Matt? And Ashland's not allowing, so we would be asking.
Medway co-op.
Oh, sorry, I get them mixed up. Thank you.
Medway is allowing spectators, correct?
I believe they are.
So that might help with that. I mean, Catherine, you bring up a really valid point. And I wouldn't want to do it for the boys and not for the girls, but if we could accommodate both, that seems reasonable. Gymnastics, I've spent more time in gyms everywhere in this country than probably anybody here. They're not that big, the venue. You would think they pale in comparison to hockey arenas. So that would have been a tough one. But again, I kind of wish I'd known, I guess, or thought it through. But we were in a different time when those meets were occurring and their season is over, and maybe we'd feel differently if they still had a few meets left now that the numbers have come down and we're in the yellow. And it's really frustrating. I understand that. But if we can do the same for girls hockey as we would do for boys, I think that would be a very reasonable solution. And then I'm looking at the sports coming up for the Winter 2 season. And again, I think there's a particularly difficult challenge when the home meets or games are held inside the field house. But if I understood Matt correctly, you're going to try to host as many of these as you can, either late spring, potentially outside, et cetera. So I think it's the kind of thing we just need to monitor as we go to see where and when. It may not be precise, but if there's an outdoor meet and we can manage some degree of spectator allowance, that would be ideal. But the fact is, some sports this fall were able to have spectators. And if you're a parent of, a soccer game, great, but a parent of a hockey game, not so much. The inequity is there. And if we can make it possible for both the girls and the boys for one game, their last game of their season, this is frankly a little bit more even about the parents. The kids are going to go play, but I know what it's like to be a parent and watch this milestone pass. Mary's last season playing tennis was supposed to happen last spring. She was the captain. It never started, and that was the end of that. We never saw her play her senior season, much less a single game. So I know how those parents feel, and I wouldn't want to put anybody at risk. But if we can make it happen, I guess I would vote in favor of that.
Andy?
I'm not in favor of this. I think that we've had a very successful winter season without spectators. I'm not sure that I want to kind of put that at risk at this point. We've just recently started to see improvement. And again, I think that that's the problem, is everyone sees a little bit of improvement. Great, we can change everything that we've been doing, change our practice. And I'm not comfortable with that at this point. I think that when we get into the fall 2 season, we're not going to see games presumably outdoors for at least another month, which at that point we can certainly see if we are really trending and staying in the right direction. So I'm comfortable with that as a consideration for, football. And if we're going to do indoor track as an outdoor option, things like that, where we're outdoors. But I think until we see a real sustained decrease and keeping it down to that point, I'm not sure that suddenly just opening up for one game is a great option when we have the ability for folks to watch most, if not all, of these games on public access. So that's where I'm on it.
Dawn?
I think it's important for us to have a rational basis for restrictions and to look right now. The last 2 weeks have been less than half of the positivity rate that we saw in December and January. So it has been a sustained decrease over 3 weeks into the yellow. And we can compare it to the fall, where we did allow spectators because we were in the yellow during that period of time. And so I think it's more about, it may have been reasonable to make that decision in January when the positivity rates were high, when we saw the governor putting all types of restrictions, even decreasing things down to 25%. Now we've seen him, take his foot off the brake, and we've gone back up to 40%. We are seeing restrictions lifted. Again, the size of this facility and the fact that it's not within our school, the fact that girls hockey is joined with Medway and Medway does in fact have a spectator policy. I mean, what I'm interested in is the science. Do we have any data via other athletic directors, via other towns, that there has been transmission among inside spectators that has impacted schools?
I don't know if we have that data. I don't know, Matt. I'm actually looking to see if you have any.
No, I don't. We haven't been shared any information like that.
I do want to just comment on, only because we met yesterday. Was it yesterday, Matt? Nicole, Matt, Nurse Leader Lynn Bowler, Scott Moles, our Health Director, and Emergency Management Director, Chief Cassidy, and Mr. Boudet. We met to discuss all of these things exactly like you are as well, just trying to find rhyme or reason to all of this. And I will say at this point, Chief Cassidy and Scott Moles did not wish us to have indoor spectators. I think they're cautiously optimistic about outdoor spectators because as it worked in the fall and where we are, but they really were discouraging us from having indoor spectators at this time. I know you're talking about a facility off of campus, but I'm just letting you know what they had shared with us.
Right, and per our meeting minutes on January 21st, Ms. Naborski touched on winter sports and allowing parents of senior athletes to attend as spectators. Mrs. Raffi stated her opinion in opposition. Mr. Morton stated that he agreed, and while he is grateful for the hard work of those who have made sports possible, it all during this pandemic, he was not open to allowing spectators at this time. Other committee members concurred. I don't understand why now it's the last game that we're having this conversation again when
that was weeks ago and things looked very different. That's what we've been saying. And this is the last chance that these parents have to see their kid. Literally for the senior parents, it's the absolute last chance.
Okay.
And just to clarify,
as a senior parent, I also don't think it's a good idea to have spectators.
is your daughter playing hockey?
Well, she didn't get to do any of the musical. There's a lot of people that are losing out on a lot of different things. So.
That's right. And so we
there's a
don't just say,
rationale.
No, I understand. There's a rationale why we didn't have the musicals, et cetera, because it was indoor and we're not allowing indoor spectators, and we allowed outdoor spectators in the fall. So I feel like that's our prioritization is supposed to be keeping the kids going to being able to have their sports, but being able to have schools open. Like that's our priority.
I would clarify this, that nobody's saying open the floodgates. That's not the ask. This is not flip. And I did want to clarify this after Andy spoke. This is not flip from our current prudent conservative approach to this to like open the doors. That's not what anybody is suggesting. We are talking about the neighborhood of maybe 10 to 15, I'll say 20 on the outside, maxed adults who come in one entrance, are sitting in a many thousands of foot facility, socially distanced for one game. Girls and boys, that is what we are talking about here.
And Louise, if we did seniors only, I believe it's only 5 families we're talking about.
Not families. We're talking about the adults.
I know, we're talking about 5 couples.
Yeah, the parent guardians.
That's 10 people max.
That is what we are talking about. It is extremely limited. Extremely limited.
It is 8:00. I'm happy to take a vote, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere by discussing this all night long, and we have other business that we need to manage this evening. I'm happy to take a vote on it.
Motion to allow spectators at the remaining hockey games.
Do you want to qualify that to parents?
Yes, sorry. Motion to allow Holliston parent spectators at the remaining hockey games.
Second the motion.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Anne Louise. Roll call vote, Mr. Morton,
No.
Ms. Hanstead,
Yes.
Dr. Savard,
No.
Mrs. Listevnik,
No.
Ms. Koshin,
Yes.
Ms. Naborski,
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, no. The noes carry it. Thank you, Mr. Baker, for your update, and we would look forward to seeing you join us in a couple of weeks to update us on how we're going.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
Thank you. Susan, do you want to continue with your update?
The next thing I want to talk about is the pool testing. I've had a lot of questions, and I know Lynn and I have probably gone to, 10 or 20 hours of webinars on this because we started this process weeks ago when Desi had said that they were going to be offering pool testing for a 6-week pilot that we would then have to pay for after the 6 weeks. And I applied immediately. We got accepted and approved. And then there was a part 2 to that. And I filled out the paperwork for that as well. And we were contacted by Ginkgo Laboratories, I think Friday. And we met with that person virtually on Monday. So I have a little presentation to share with you to kind of walk through what we've learned and what the pool testing might look like if we were able to do it. So as I mentioned, Ginkgo Laboratories is the one that was matched for us. And I have just a little explanation of what pool testing is. And really, the opportunity for our students or staff would be that we try to keep within cohorts or classrooms of one pool can be from 5 to 25 people in a pool. So each of those persons would independently have to swab in class. So the class during instructional time, because there would be no time we could remove them from the room, we would take about 15 minutes per class, and they would swab themselves and put the swabs into a container, and then those would be collected by one of our staff members, and the pool would be sent out. They all get tested, and we get the results within 24 to 48 hours. After that, if we get a batch back that comes back positive, then our staff would have to individually test every person of that pool. So the smaller the pools, the quicker it is. But 25 would really not happen in our pools right now because we really would limit it to a classroom size, which might be 10 or 12 kids in a class because of the cohort model. So it is a 6-week process, which has already started. And again, we just got matched, so we wouldn't have been able to start sooner than this. The end of this process would be on March 28th, and then it would become a process where we would have to fund any additional costs for ourselves after that. So it is efficient because you get information on a larger amount of people, but it's challenging because then if you do get a positive, you have to then find out who in that group might be positive. And in most cases, it might be one member of that pool. In some cases, you might not get any positives. Someone could be at the very end of their transmission and have been asymptomatic. Maybe they're on day 12, 13. So when they get tested on a Monday, by the time you retest them on Wednesday, now you have all negative people. And then you would take the whole pool. If you had all negatives that had been in a positive pool, then you would send all of those people home, and they would then go and get PCR tested to rule out the positives at that point. So it can be potential for 3 trials, but if you are negative from the origination of the pool, then we don't have to retest any of those people. There is a 2-minute video if we have, oops. Let me see if I can get this to work. What did I do last time? Now I'm on my share. Let me go forward, and then if I can get the video afterwards, I'll show you. Because I know we have a lot on the docket tonight as well. It really just shows how the children would swab. On this, I just have information from Ginkgo about the process of cleaning hands, removing the tube, collecting swabs, closing the swab after 25 are in there. But again, we would not be able to use 25 people in one of our pools just because we don't have 25 in one classroom because of our limitations for space. And then the samples get returned. A lot of the work would be done by our own staff, and I'm going to talk about just that we would need to hire additional nursing staff to keep this process going. So I'm trying to estimate the cost right now based on our conversation with our representative that we met with on Monday. And again, right now, DESE will cover the cost up through March 28th. And if we needed additional staff, they did say that they would cover the cost of the additional staff through the March 28th. But after that time, and I think even now, I would want to, if we were able to move forward, I would want to move our nurse leader, Lynn Bowler, who's here with us tonight, to a coordinator role, because there's a lot of logistics to coordinating all this work, making sure everything is sanitary, making sure that everything is marked properly, that we have all the individual pools put together properly and sent out. So I would end up having to move her to the full-time coordinator role for this process, and then we would replace her position by a per diem nurse at Miller and bring in some additional nurses, a couple of days of work, a couple of days a week to help with the pool testing as well at the building level. So I'm estimating that about $1,500 a week. The second part of that is, and this is after that March 28th date, then each pool, which again can be up 5 to 25 people within a pool, is $85 according to Ginkgo. So the more people we have in the pool, the larger, the less the amount per individual is. But we would be limited to probably about no more than 10 or 12 in a pool, just based on our configurations in our classrooms. And it would also depend on who had volunteered to be part of that full pool. So I've estimated if we had 100 classrooms or 100 groups of pools tested, which would be 10 at 1,000, would be $8,500 a week. Additionally, there are administrative costs of each building $250 per month, and FedEx or courier service to get the materials back and forth. So my estimate for 1,000 tests per week would mean on cohort A week, I'm sorry, on the first week I would do a cohort A on Monday because they're here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'd get the results back by Wednesday. So if we got results back and we had a positive pool, our nurses would be able to do the antigen test as long as we got the data back that day. Those rapid tests would help us in that manner. And then the following week, when cohort B was in on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we would test cohort B on Wednesday. So we would get the test results back no later than Friday, again, to be able to do the antigen tests on the premises. If we got test results back on a weekend, that just complicates things because our students aren't in the building or staff. So with that in mind and the $10,250 per week, it comes out to about $113,000 if we started to pay for this from April 1st to June 23rd. If we were able to get larger pools, but again, we'd have to have the majority of the children in the class, and usually the largest number we have is about 12. So that would mean all 12 of those students would have to participate in that pool to bring the cost down a little bit. I already explained about testing on Mondays with cohort A and alternating with cohort B. It just seems the most feasible way to get them tested. Because if they were not in the building on the day we got results back, then we would need them to come to the building on the remote days for reflex testing. And that would be a little bit of a challenge. The other challenge with antigen testing, as we've talked about before, the antigen testing is most effective when it's used on symptomatic people. That's why right now we have the ability to test symptomatic students or staff if they're in the building already and they find out that they have symptoms. We're able to use the rapid antigen testing to give them information quickly. It is not, it's far less effective on asymptomatic people, and that's why you could have a positive pool but still get all negative results with that. So that would be when we would recommend, if we got all negative results from the antigen test that we did on our pool, we would then move forward and recommend that all of those individuals that have to get PCR tested, and they would do that outside of school, and we would have to quarantine them until we got that information back. The other piece that we have heard in all of our meetings is that the expectation is that we have 80% of our staff or students to be part of this process in order to get accurate and useful results. And as I mentioned before, it's about 15 minutes per class. So in this model, it would be the teacher in the class would observe the students. She wouldn't have to touch the materials, but she would be the observer in the class to make sure the students do it properly. The students would individually put it into the container, and then our nurses would collect each of the pool materials. And that's why I mentioned that we would need some additional staff to do that. So in order to gauge some interest on this, I did send out a survey to get family interest. And I'll send this out to the school committee after tonight, this little presentation, because I put the DESE presentation, and in that presentation, you'll see the information that was in our survey was sent out, it's FAQs, but it's based on the information that DESE sent us as well. So you'll see that it matches up to the information that was sent out to parents. As of later in the day, I think around 2 o'clock or so, we looked at the data here, and I had 1,027 parents respond. 57% said yes, and 43% said no, they would not. But those 1,027 parents represented more students than that. So of the people that responded yes, that was accommodating 914 of our 2813 students. So for people that are interested or willing and volunteering that they would be interested in having their students pool tested for surveillance, that would represent about 32% of our student population. And similarly, I sent out the survey to staff to see who would be interested, because I wanted to be able to have this data for you tonight. 280 out of 557 staff members responded to that survey. 67% said yes, and 33% said they would not be interested at this time. That would be 188 people that said yes of our 557 staff members, which would be about 34% of the staff members interested in pool testing. I did mention already that DESE recommends having 80% of the community for accurate and useful results. And that is where the challenge is for our next steps to try to move this process forward. So I'm going to pause there and stop sharing my screen for a minute. As I mentioned, there is a quick little video that shows how the students swab. It's actually not invasive. For anyone who has had the PCR test at an office, it can be somewhat invasive. This swab is a nasal swab at the lower area of your nose, and it is not as far up as some of the other PCR testing that people have been involved in. So that part is pretty simple. And they say that students, I believe 11 and up, they feel confident can do it. That being said, they've also said younger students have been successful doing it, but they really felt comfortable, I think, at 5th grade and up, as far as doing it independently. Lisa?
Okay, a couple of questions. Are there other options besides the nasal test? I think in at least one other town, they take a kit home, spit into it, bring it back. Are there any options that we've identified? I think there's a lot of discomfort with parents of having their kid in a classroom doing this surrounded by other kids. Obviously, they have to take their mask off, etc. Are there other options?
There are saliva tests that are available. The Ginkgo is not offering saliva tests. So again, this is part of the DESE pilot that was offered, and it would be free until March 28th. When I say free, it wouldn't be free because we would be paying our staff. So there are associated costs, but it would be a lot less fees involved when we're able to do it with them paying for the testing itself. But no, that is not an option for us in this model at all. Dawn?
I was concerned with the survey where it said that it would occur biweekly, because the definition of biweekly can mean twice a week or can mean twice a month. And I was concerned because of its impact when you join that with 15 minutes of lost instruction time. Parents were concerned, did you mean 30 minutes of lost instruction time a month, or did you mean 200 minutes of lost instruction time? But I think the more important point is, why do we have to lose instruction time? Why couldn't we do this in a more creative compromise manner where it would be possible to have kids showing up 15 or 20 minutes before school started and doing it outside, or 15 or 20 minutes after school ended? Or for those kids that are able to stay for a longer day, could they do it during one of those periods instead of losing more instruction time? So would you have, I mean, I'm thrilled that 1,100 student and staff were interested in being part of a program like this, but would it be more if they knew they weren't going to lose somewhere between 30 minutes or 200 minutes of instruction time, and if they knew they could do it outside? I thought the other part that I was concerned about was parents that have, or families that have children working remotely right now. I'm not sure they understood whether they would be part of this. Is there a way for kids to schedule a drive-up time and be part of this? You know, there's a lot of talk about increasing the number of days our kids in the hybrid model are in school, but we still have probably something, and I'll ask you for the numbers later, but 20, 25, 30% of our students are remote. If a program like this would change their mind and make them come in for in-person learning, that would mean a lot too. And I think that would be an important thing to know and understand. But I just need to understand why we would have to take the instruction time away. Why couldn't we do this before, after, during like a lunch or a downtime period for the kids to stay with an extended day?
And I'll have Lynn weigh in as well, but let me just sort of give an example. So I'm Mrs. Smith's class of 12 students, and 10 out of the 12 in that class and the teacher said, yes, I will do pool testing. So we would have to have all 11 of those people, the teacher and 10 students, together at the same time, because they all have to go into the same container. And that's why they do it together all at once. So they'd have to be 6 feet apart, taking their mask down and do it. And that's why we have the teacher. The only way we can make this work right now would be the teacher as the observer, which is recommended by Ginkgo, because in order for a nursing member to do that, they would have to go to every single room that's in that, and there'd be no way to get it done in that time frame. We talked about, could they line up? Could they wait? If we had them line up, for example, in the cafeteria while they're waiting for their testing, they would lose more instructional time. So theoretically, yes, you could do it outside. You could do it before or after school, but you'd have to have all those willing participants there at the same time, waiting at the same time.
And is DESE allowing programs other than ginkgo, which is the nasal swab, like Wellesley's program, where you pick up a packet, you do it at home, you bring it back?
No.
And it's
Wellesley is paying for theirs, so I can't be, I know they're, I mean, I've been talking with him. They've been doing that for quite some time and paying a lot of money for that. This, because it was the free, they matched us, so it is, that is who they match us with. We don't have an option to say no to that one, but can I have somebody else? That's
Also, I just going to chime in, that's Miramis, and Miramis is not one of the vendors offered by the state.
And I did have some parents email me, and particularly the remote question that you asked, and I did say, if you are interested in having your child be part of this, please respond. I mean, certainly there'd be more information sent out, they'd have to consent and everything else, so this is not definitive. That they still have to go forward if they give us interest in it. But I said, please feel free, because we'll maybe be able to come up with some idea for that, because maybe you could have 10 remote kids come up at the same time and do a pool in that manner as well. So that wouldn't be unforeseen that we couldn't potentially do that.
Catherine?
I was just wondering if you had the breakdown stratified by grade or by school in terms of people who are interested in participation.
I can get that for you. I just, given that we just got, I was trying to keep it open until 2:00 after sending out another reminder last night. I did have them check off what grade level. So we could, percentage wise, it seems like some of it was a little higher, but it didn't seem drastically different. But I haven't done it by which students, because some parents had 4 kids. And so we'd have to tease that out. But yes, I could get that information for you.
Great, thank you.
Sin?
So was it twice a week because you're doing like cohort A, cohort B? Because I think that, right, it says you're doing cohort A on like Mondays, for example, and then Thursday you would do cohort B. Is that what you were planning to do?
Yeah, and I apologize, Dawn, you asked me that as well. And bi-weekly can mean every other week, or bi-weekly can mean twice a week. So again, a couple of parents did ask me that, and I clarified my bi-weekly went every other week, because the way our schedule works with having 3 days 1 week and 3 days for the next cohort the other week, it would allow us to get, for example, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that cohort A is in, because it can take 24 to 48 hours to get the data back. If we tested our cohort A on Monday and got results no later than Wednesday, then they're right there with us before they leave the building. We would swab them again and get them able to get the tests in school, which seems very practical. We won't have to get them all back. If we got results back, for example, we tested our cohort B on a Thursday, we would very likely not get results till Saturday. And then we would have to quarantine them for the weekend, because we would recommend quarantine because we wouldn't know or be able to test them until Monday. It's very tricky. So that, to me, is a very practical way to do it, doing 1 week one group and 1 week the other group. So once every other week.
And Louise?
I think you just answered it. I was trying to get my head around the process. If there's a positive result on the pool, then immediately all the students would be retested, and we're able to process that quickly enough so that we know in that cohort. But am I wrong? If in the pool there's a positive, then you can determine who it is through the antigen testing, but still everybody would have been exposed as a close contact, or just those within 6 feet?
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I mean, it would go, you'd still have to do contact tracing. So let's say we have 15 people in the pool and we get a positive pool. So then the nurses would then test those 15 people. If we get one positive, then we can rule everybody else out and say those 14 are not positive. They get to stay in school. We send home the one to quarantine. That would be easy. The tricky one is if you get the positive pool, and then by the time you test, because again, the antigen test is not as reliable on asymptomatic. That's why they recommended it for symptomatic. But DESE has said we could use it. So we're following the best that we can do with the different options that we have. So if in the event those 15 people all get rapid tested on Wednesday, and they all come back negative, now I do have to send them home to quarantine to get the PCR test. So they would get a third test on their own to rule out. And if all of those come back negative, then they could come back to school.
Wait, all of them or just those who are close contacts?
No, because if that's where the tricky part, the pool testing is able to get to a large mass. But if you get a positive and don't get the antigen, if we get no positives from our individual tests, then we have to still have them test a third time with the PCR test. So those 15 same people would get a third test outside of school and quarantine until we got all negative results from those.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Lynn? Am I saying that correctly? Am I explaining it right?
No, I think you've been on plenty of webinars. You have it, Susan.
I know.
So what happens if, all right, here's another scenario. You've got a cohort of 12 students in cohort A and a teacher. Of those 12 students, only 6 of them have been, parent of those students will actually get the pooled testing because the others have opted not to get pooled testing. And then there's a positive case that happens in that pool, then it would make sense to then ask if they would want to be tested in school on that Wednesday, if that's positive, for the entire cohort of 12, right? Or were we just going to send those other 6 home and say your parents can decide what they're going to do?
We would have to wait until we had a positive case. So the positive pool doesn't mean a positive case. So once if the antigen testing of those 6 people gave us a positive case, then we would look at that one individual and say, who's a close contact? So we wouldn't, the part that I could see being tricky is if 6 out of the 12 that you're referring to and the teacher get tested and we get a positive pool, and then if we have to send them home to quarantine, those 6 plus teacher 7, I then don't have a teacher for those other 6. So indirectly, those 6 would have to go home as well because they wouldn't have necessarily a teacher.
Right.
So it's
okay.
I try to think of all the what ifs that can happen.
Yeah. Okay. So in the end, they may end up having to quarantine anyway if the teacher has to be out anyway, right?
Right. But we have to have written consent both for the antigen testing and for, so it would take a lot of time to get the consents together as well.
And then the permission, not the permission slip, whatever it's called, the thing that we filled out from Beacon, Lynn, I'm sorry, like what's it called? For you to fill
consent,
out.
Individual.
Consent
Individual.
for Project Beacon.
Trouble with that. So the consent form, because there was one that Desi was mentioning, are we doing the one that because I filled it out, but the one for Beacon, is that what we were supposed to fill out? Or is there a different one that Desi wanted us to use? Because I was confused about on the webinar that they were seeming like they were.
We're going to stick with Project Beacon because we already have a contract with them. And so if there's anybody in the pool, that ends up being positive and they haven't registered through Project Beacon, we'd have to send out the link and the parent would have to sign in so we can register them.
Good. Thank you.
But right now with the 32% of students and 34% of staff that indicated interest, we don't have enough to begin pool testing. Just given that, because if I had, for example, 3 out of 10 in a class, I can't make a pool up. I mean, they tell us we should have close to 80%. I've heard from some districts that are at 56, 57%. If we could get to closer to 60, 70%, then we may be able, it might be feasible, but we're not. They also said we cannot have a pool less than 5. And so if you have a classroom, what you'd end up doing now is mixing multiple cohorts to make a pool of 10, which now we put ourselves, it could potentially close down a few classes. So we really do have to keep the pools contained to the cohort of the class. Dawn?
Is it possible, I think some of the schools that implemented this, and there's at least a dozen doing it now, and many of them in conjunction with the idea that they can then also bring more kids back and move kids to 3 feet instead of 6. But some of the schools that have implemented it, my understanding is they did it initially at the high school or the middle school. If you did it at the high school, and again, I know this data is all fresh, but just to take another look at it, would that give you the possibility of the pools? Meaning you have kids that rotate between 3 different classes. So you have more opportunities to have the kind of pool that you need. But I'm optimistic that 1,102 students and staff would participate in this. Is that, those are the numbers between the 188 staff members that would be interested in the 914 with just the limited information they have now. Can we break it down by school and figure out if there might be a creative way to get to those pools in the high school?
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely separate number of staff by school, just staff numbers, not any names. And we can absolutely, Dan, I know has been helpful breaking down the data for me. So we can absolutely break down how many how many responded yes by grade level at this point. Some of the logistics that you're describing are not quite as simple. We'd have to really think of how that might look, because I would just have to really look at where those people are, because if they're spread around the building, to pull them from multiple places is not the way that that's not how they've told us we can do it. So I'd want to go back to the Ginkgo representative and find out if that's even a possibility, because they definitively have said it's more accurate and feasible when you have a large majority in the process. So yeah, I can get you the data and see. Always open to thinking creatively around that.
And then the next question was the Bionix antigen test. You said on asymptomatic individuals, it's not as reliable. Do we know the reliability rate or the false positive, false negative rate?
I
Lynn,
can answer that.
You have that, yeah.
For the Abbott Binax for asymptomatic children, the sensitivity is close to 67%. So it really goes down. So it's much higher if you have a symptomatic adult. But we have been approved for use it for kids. But for asymptomatic kiddos, the sensitivity is about 67%.
And Lynn, do they break that down further, like it is more accurate with older children than younger?
It didn't. I would think definitely the older, maybe the adolescents, high schoolers, young 20-year-olds, it would probably be a little bit better, but not so much in the children.
And the tricky thing right now, again, with the numbers that we have and the clock ticking on the DESE timeline, I'm not sure how. We can continue trying. I'm open to suggestions, but with the data we have right now, we wouldn't be able to move forward because originally a tentative date we were considering, Lynn and I talked about maybe March 1st, but given the few people, I can't move in that direction and start doing consents without a larger pool of people interested.
I wonder if, so I know you sent out the survey and totally appreciate that, but I just wonder if people fully understand, even sitting here, we have all these questions, if everybody really understands the process, what it helps with, et cetera.
Well, what it would help with is that obviously if we had an asymptomatic person, it would help us identify that person. But as of right, the good news, and you've all pointed this out, Lisa, and other people when we were talking about sports, right now we have had no transmission that we can find connected to school. So even if we've had an asymptomatic person, we have not had transmission from that. And Lynn has all the data. When we've had a student at the elementary level, for example, it's been able to be traced back from a family member. So they're bringing it in from outside because things are happening in the community or people are going to work, things are being done. But even when that's happening and they're asymptomatic, it has not transmitted at school. And the reason we can say that is because when we identify the close contacts, they all have to get tested. And none of the close contacts have identified as positive in these potential transmissions of asymptomatic people. So that's the great news. And right. Our data is really strong right now. I'm very worried about the vacation. We are hearing about people are fed up. We all are. We're all burnt out. People want to see their families. People want to travel. So I am worried about, after vacation, what could change again. That's a possibility. And the good news is even when we've had upticks in the community from travel and all of the things that you've seen, we still haven't had transmission at school. Our mitigation is really working well. So I can't promise you that I'd be able to bring more kids back in person unless we could get the 6 feet lowered to 3 feet. And the buses might be a good way to move right now. We're seeing that they're lowering and making changes to buses, but there's still other pieces to that puzzle that we would have to negotiate It would be a change to our reopening plan and our MOU. So those pieces would have to transpire as well. And that's another reason why we're pushing really hard. Some of you know that our neighboring communities and myself as a superintendent, we sent a letter to Governor Baker asking for educators to be prioritized in the vaccination process. And as you've probably heard, we are actually moving down the list because they've now added caretakers to that list. So it's a little discouraging because that is a huge mitigation that could really help us here and potentially get us to that 3 feet that we all want to get to, which would then allow us to bring kids back in. So I'm at a loss for words because there's a lot of frustrating information coming out and we're trying so hard, but I'm so excited that the good news is that we continue to be able to keep our doors open and our mitigation is working in school. So I don't know if you have any questions related to the pool testing at the moment.
So what are you recommending at this point, Susan? Was this just to update us on where we're at, or?
At the moment, with the numbers that we have, I don't have enough of it. We can't move forward with the numbers we have. If we could
you
get
mean based
closer,
on the willing participation? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Susan, what is
closer to even?
DESE won't pay the program for Holliston through March 28th if we don't have 80% of 3,000 participating in the first week? Or is it based on Ginkgo saying? I mean, I guess my concern is, I think a number of schools that implemented it, the participation rate increased. I mean, we were on some of the collaborative calls together. As they implemented the program, as they started it, more people would join in. So do we need 80% of 3,000 in the first week in order for DESE to pay for this no-cost program for us until the end of March? Or
No.
Is it Ginkgo saying that? Like, what is the...
No, they're not telling us we have to have 80% to participate, but it has to be feasible to do it. So I look into the high school numbers that you mentioned and see if we can come up with some ideas around that. And we also have to ensure that they won't let us do for staff. They're saying no less than 5 in a pool. And for students, they would want us to do a minimum of 10. But with that, the price goes up per person, the less we have in the pool. So I then have to estimate the cost. And again, if we start the process even during the trial, we also then have to figure out what the plan would be after the trial because we don't have the 113,000 to continue it. If we did, the more interest that came, we would also have to have a plan for funding that as well.
Can we do the trial without committing to the cost later? Meaning if DESE is footing the bill through March 28th, can we find out if we do this, more individuals want to take part in it, we find that it is the right solution for us, or we find out it's not and people aren't interested and operationally it's difficult. Are we obligated to move forward after March 28th if we try it at no cost?
No, that is a good question. We can do the trial without continuing on, but I would have to find out what percentage they're willing to allow us to do. That I don't have an answer to because they never told us what the bottom threshold was.
I think they said something about you being able to choose it by school, though. Like you don't have to say,
Yes.
I'm going to do all the elementary. You could say, we're going to target just the high school or middle school or just the high school, and then move it from there. And then but you'd have to do it more often. Like we're going to do the high school every week in order to make that work, I guess.
Yes, you don't have to do all schools. We could pick a school. We could pick upper levels for various reasons. The older ones can swap for themselves. I certainly don't know at this point if I would even consider recommending it below 6th grade for that reason. So 6 through 12 would be a likely more viable opportunity if we had enough interest. Lisa?
I think we should try to do this even if it's in a very limited way for a couple of reasons. I think that the survey, I got a lot of comments from parents, and I think the survey brought up a lot of questions, and I think we probably got a lot of no's on that survey because people were confused and because they don't really know anything about pool testing. I think that we could start to try to educate people about pool testing, and I also think that we could try to push up our participation rates over the course of the next few weeks while we have the luxury of having the free testing from the state. I don't want to give up free without at least trying it, because I think that pool testing is probably going to be an important key to us getting more kids back at some point. And I also think that it's something that we need. I feel like we're going to need to figure it out at some point, and I would rather try to do it and make some mistakes and see, you know, what the other logistical issues are that we haven't thought of while the state is willing to pay for it. I'm extremely reluctant to pass up on an opportunity to try something for free when we know public health experts are saying that this could be the key to getting more students back. We know that, you know, a lot of kids are asymptomatic. So we know that, you know, there are issues with that. And I just feel like I think we're going to look back on this and regret not at least trying to do it, even if we do it in a very limited way at one school or pick a grade or what have you.
I mean, I will say, when I saw 57%, because I look at the graph first, 57% said yes. So it's not the percentage, it's actually the fact that not enough people responded. But I did send it out twice, so I hear what you're saying. So I don't know how to get people to respond. I guess I'm thinking I have to gauge they're either not interested or they have questions. But a lot of people did email me with questions, and I was able to try to encourage them to respond, even if they're remote. So I don't want to discourage that kind of questioning and answering. But the 57% isn't a bad percentage if it was a larger audience that participated in responding, because that would give me hope. You know, 50%.
I'm sorry, were you sharing with any of those parents? I mean, I know that there's a lot of information out there on the reasons to do pool testing. And I just don't think most of our parents have seen any of that yet, because I don't think it's been on anyone's radar. And unless they, you know, Googled it and had the time in the middle of a workday to research it themselves, I just don't think that people were, you know, necessarily had the time or were taking the time to do that. I think that if we, you know, we're able to put out some information about this and, you know, put in links to what public health officials are saying about this, that we would get a very different response potentially.
Well, I mean, I can share some data. Medway Schools has been doing pool testing with their staff for a number of weeks. They've had 2 positive staff out of, I don't know how many weeks, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks. That were asymptomatic, but there was no transmission from those 2 positives. They started pool testing with Ginkgo as well with their students this week, and they had 0 cases. So it's a lot of it is really to ease anxiety, and that's what these other superintendents have said to me. I've asked them, tell me why you're moving forward, because some of them have commented on with 10,000 a week, 11,000 a week. If I can't change the ratio of getting students in, I can't justify the cost if I'm not getting transmission. So it's one of the, I can only share the information I have, and there is a lot of information on there, and I have the DESE information as well, which has the FAQs. They're not able to promise us it's going to change. What I will say, the districts that were struggling to get back to school are the ones that are finding the best justification for it, because if they've been full remote and using this as a mitigation strategy, and some of the districts that you even mentioned earlier in this discussion, it's part of their MOU that they have to do it. So in general, you know, I as soon as today, I have multiple texts to different superintendents. Most of the ones I've talked to are still saying they're not seeing it as that it's changing any transmission, but what it is doing is it's easing anxiety, because they know that they have 0 cases and things like that. So there's a lot of social emotional reasons, but they haven't been able to come up with as many in the districts that I've talked to, the physical justification for it.
And Louise?
Thank you, Susan. I know you put a lot of work into this. So I do think education, awareness, understanding is a barrier to getting that 57% up higher right now. I just think, you know, when people get a survey, sometimes they kind of gloss and then if they think it's more of an informational survey. And I wonder if with more of a brief but to the point clear explanation of how it works, what we get out of it, and saying register to participate. In the world of marketing, sometimes when you put the decision down, people want to get their place in line, even if they're not sure. But if it's just a survey that's informational, they may not participate in the survey. And I think you would see the numbers go up. But I guess I see no risk in moving ahead with the free trial part of this. I think there's some value in that. And we could work, as Lisa said, to educate in the short term before it starts. The only final thing, now that I understand really where, the reality is that it'd probably be more applicable and relevant in middle and high school, I think you might also be able to get the cost down, because at the high school, we don't really have true cohorts up there, or as precise cohorts. I'm not probably expressing that correctly, but I think you could do bigger pools up at the high school to reduce the cost of the testing. Could be wrong about that, but I think you might be able to find a way to get bigger pools because of the way the population is up there. So just a thought. I don't know, maybe Lynn was shaking her head, so I don't know.
I mean, it's tricky, for example, staff. If we say if we put 5 staff members together in a pool and the pool comes back positive, and then we don't get a positive result from our antigen testing, we now could have shut down 5 classrooms. So, there's so many different, I've tried to think of everything.
About the kids, not the teachers.
No, I know, but I mean, I have to offer it to teachers as well, because teachers have indicated interest as well. So I'm just giving, so as much as we have a little more flexibility at the high school, I still would want to know how to limit it by maybe area of the building and all kinds of things, because it could impact, if you put 25 kids in that one pool, you're right, that brings the cost down. But now I could have impacted 25 classrooms. And so I would have to talk to Ginkgo and some of these other.
No, not 25 classrooms, 2 classrooms maybe.
No, I'm saying if we only had, for example, 1 kid in this room, 1 kid in that room, because some of our cohorts on certain days, there's only a couple of kids in a certain class. And if only one of those was interested, they potentially could be pulling from 10 or 11 or 12 different classes to make a pool of 25 to bring the price down.
Right. Okay, it's complicated.
Yeah, but I'll pull together the data that you're speaking of and see if we can come up with another idea for getting parents to show if they're interested if we do move forward. But I want to also talk to the representative to see what is the bottom. They never told us what was the bottom number that we could start with. Just the usefulness of it. It's not as helpful when you only have 1 here and 1 there. It doesn't really mitigate.
Susan, you spoke to the fact that it may reduce anxiety, and is there any way to pool the 20 or 25 or 30% of families that are still remote and find out if a program like this would encourage them to come back to in-person learning?
Yes, I mean, again, that's something we've got to figure out logistically.
Yeah.
How, when, because that brings a staffing concern about how to get them and how to create the pools, because then you'd have to get them all to come at the same time to keep the pool consistent.
Yeah. John, I think the whole point of the surveillance pooling is to see in-school transmission. So I don't even think they were talking about bringing the remote kids in to participate in the school, because it's a school surveillance. That's my understanding.
I asked a confusing question. I guess what I mean is, could we ask those families if the school implemented a program like this, would they then make the choice to move from remote into the hybrid program? Would it encourage those families to come back?
I mean, we could certainly separate that out and try to get interest in that area, because yes, one of the things that is happening, some districts, as I mentioned, are using it if they're trying to transition back to hybrid or back to in-person. They are using it as a way to bring their remote students in for that reason. So yeah, we could certainly come up with a way to try to get that group separated. Right. So we'll work on this for surveys and come up with some other ideas. But I'm just, the longer we go without having it, I had said to them, can't we start the 6 weeks once we get together? I don't like that they had to start it before we could even get information out to people. We just got Ginkgo communicating with us. So the clock's already ticking, and the end date is March 28th, no matter when we start with the pilot.
What a cluster. All right. any further questions? Because I'd like to move forward with, we have a budget discussion and it's 8:45.
Stace, are we going back to COVID update? There's like a resolution that a few school committees have put forward about vaccinations for teachers and the prioritization of that and bringing it closer and having specific. There's a resolution that I wanted to introduce, but I also don't want to hold up our administrators' time. So is it possible to flip back to this at the end and talk as a committee about that?
Yeah, do you have it available to show on the screen
there and talk about? Absolutely, but I want to be cognizant of their time. So can we?
Yeah, we can do it afterwards. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, Susan, take a breath and then take it away with the budget.
Yeah, and I apologize. I think I'm having some internet issues again tonight. Living in a windy area, and I'm still trying to get a new internet provider here. So I apologize if I've gone in and out, but I am going to share my screen again. Okay, so I guess it was just Monday that we presented to our budget subcommittee with Ann Louise, Lisa Koshin, and Andy Morton, as well as some of our town FinCom members and our town administrator. We presented some priority needs for FY22.
Actually, Susan, it was a week ago Thursday from 3 to 5, and then we had a follow-up budget subcommittee meeting. An executive session on Monday. So it's just, I know it's a blur.
That's right. We had two presentations. One was at our meeting on Thursday night, and then we presented some more information to discuss this a little bit more on Monday. So thank you for reminding me, Ann Louise. It is all blurring together, and we all need a vacation. So as you know, this year the process has been a little bit different, as I've explained to our school committee members. We are really concerned with the image that COVID-19 has had and is still having on our students and our community. So it's very hard to predict what is going to happen next for FY22, FY23 and beyond. But one thing we know is that students are affected both academically and social emotionally. Last spring, they were full remote without any warning. And then this fall, we were able to aggressively come up with a learning model that we're quite proud of, that was able to get as many students back in person as possible, pre-K to grade 12 plus during COVID-19. And we've been very successful in that process. Unlike many districts, we were a little bit more aggressive and a little creative with our model, and it's really paid off dividends for sure. But the long-term effects are hard to be determined what they exactly are. Well, we can predict that there will be those deficits, and particularly we're hearing a lot about social emotional needs of students and trauma. Now, certainly the social emotional concerns have been growing in the last decades. We've seen an increase over time. But now COVID-19 has added another layer to that. So students that were typically not anxious or stressed in school or outside of school are dealing with a level of trauma that they have never had to deal with before. So our numbers are significantly impacted. So as a team, we wanted to come up with a different process because we felt like strategic initiatives is not a realistic way to be thinking for next year. We can't really predict and add on new positions without addressing what are the learning gaps for our students. So that's the approach that we took as a team, to look district-wide, pre-K to 12 plus, to see what learning gaps we might see and how we might progress next year, which is going to be our year to repair. And then FY23, we can start to build back again. So it's really, we're trying to be very transparent with this process, but also have a sustainable process in place for the next few years. And long-term, our goal is really to kind of, in a longitudinal plan that would go from FY23 to FY27. So initially I had said that I would start strategic planning this spring and into summer. But now that we can see that we really need next year to be our year to repair, we've actually thought that if we wait till the fall and start planning a strategic plan that would go from FY23 to FY27, that will allow us to get through some of these learning gaps and really plan an aggressive repair model for our students, and then plan long-term how to improve and envision for the future. And once we do that, by the end of this year, I am going to start working on laying out with our team a 5-year professional development plan and a 5-year, I know Dan's already been working on a 5-year technology plan, and also a 5-year curriculum plan to talk about what is sustainable long-term. And that will help us guide the budget process in the future as well. The priority needs areas that we focused on are addressing learning gaps, technology needs, curriculum, professional development, social emotional learning supports, social justice and equity, other personnel that we might need, and then capital needs. And by far and large, these priority needs are focused on mitigation for COVID-19. And we really tried not to put anything on the plan for FY22 that we would be considering as non-COVID related needs. So for learning gaps at Placentino, they're recommending 2 15-hour math tutors. They have literacy tutors in place, but to add 2 more 15-hour math tutors, again, would help with interventions for our students who are struggling that may not have struggled in the past, but with remote learning and the different things that they're up against, we are seeing more students regress or not progress as much as possible. And the same at Miller, thinking again with math tutors, we're looking for these as a one-time need for next year, a 16-hour math tutor and a 30-hour reading tutor. And Kelly had talked to you a few weeks back with our ESY program for the summer. She is recommending going from 5 weeks to 6 weeks and also adding additional tutoring staff to support additional students. So you'll see a cost associated with that tonight as well. For technology, Dan McLeod has talked to us about all the different software that we've been using, again, related to COVID-19 and the additional cameras and Zoom and all of the platforms that we're using for students. Those things to support our students' needs moving into our COVID-19 repair year next year will still need to be in place to have effective learning for our students. As well as that, you know that we've added multiple, Dan would know the number, but so much more technology this year, having Chromebooks in almost every hand for students and all of the cameras and document materials, and teachers have iPads. I mean, there's so much more technology in there. And with that leads a need for more tech support in order to get those devices out to people and make sure they're updated as quickly as possible so student learning is not impacted. For curriculum needs, we again are focusing on what do we need next year to help with some of this repair. So Kelly and Peter are recommending coming up with an elementary literacy tier 3 intervention materials and training to address COVID gaps. So this still has to be vetted, and we're going to be looking at piloting or potentially examining some of those materials, and Kelly's starting to gather that information so we can determine which particular materials would be best for tier 3 interventions. For professional development, I already mentioned we see that there are significant gaps are being created by COVID in social emotional learning. So we want to do a targeted professional development and again, put together a long-term plan for SEL in our professional development model as well. Also helping to support students, so more rigorous co-teaching training and specialized instruction in our PD models. At the elementary level, they've already started the workshop model with Fountas and Pinnell. So this would be phase 2. So this is not technically a COVID need, but it's continuing the literacy model that we are working on, and that PD has to continue to help our teachers move the process forward with their students. And again, tied to the materials for tier 3 interventions, we would have targeted training around that for next year. Along with that, I had talked about a 0.5 coordinator for social emotional learning for next year, because that's truly a way that we can help support our staff and have a person that can come in and not only audit our programs for social emotional learning, but also make recommendations for interventions and then work with our staff members, which would be our adjustment counselors, social workers, and our guidance counselors to help come up with some training for staff and also supports for staff to put initiatives in place for students. But now although I had it in FY23 thinking of that 0.5 coordinator coming in FY23 as a 1.0 SEL and equity person would be a goal for FY23. Because of our real targeted need in SEL, it really would be beneficial for that COVID repair year to have a 1.0 director that would be for SEL and equity. Because even though we know that social justice didn't necessarily get created because of COVID as much as our social emotional learning ramped up, so much has happened this year in conjunction with COVID, and we see major concerns for our students, and we really need to find some supports for them within our learning models and within our instructional day as well. Next on the list, Mood Check is something that's been ongoing at Holliston Public Schools, and it provides really important data in grades 7, 9, and 11. In FY22, this will now have to be funded by the district, and clearly it's completely connected to SEL. So this is something we want to continue to have, that longitudinal data, which helps advise our needs of students and helps give some targeted interventions for them. And also training for equity leaders and staff would be part of this process and hopefully help be led by that 1.0 director of SEL and equity. For other personnel at the high school, as you know, COVID has led to quarantining and different needs of staff and students. And one of the areas that we found that was really helpful this year is we added, as part of our CARES money, we've used permanent building substitutes so that they're in the building, they know our students and staff, they're able to float in and out of classes. So the high school is recommending that they have 2 permanent high school building subs starting next year. And Lynn Bowler, our nurse leader, is recommending, and this is for multiple purposes, 1.5 FTEs in additional nursing staff in the district, and that's twofold. We need to get to 6 for the district in order to meet our criteria for DPH, but in addition, we've had an increased need with contact tracing, and even though we may have less need for contact tracing next year, we are still going to have needs for wellness for students that is going to require additional nursing staff in the district in FY22. Last on the list is our boilers at Placentino and Miller, with 1 of the 4 are down and 1 is failing. So that is not a specific COVID-19 need. However, if we don't address it, we may not be able to have students in the building at some point. So that is an important capital need, as well as it is a capital need, but it's back to technology. The Wi-Fi access point upgrade at Miller and Placentino is critical. And that goes back to, again, what I said about so many more devices are in our buildings. So now we need to make sure we have adequate Wi-Fi access to keep those access points upgraded and also technology accessible. So now the cost associated with that. Even though these are one-time needs that we're recommending, some of them would carry over because they're going to become ongoing needs. But that list of priority needs and one-time cost comes to $460,805, or a 1.31% increase. I will share this document with you as well, the priority needs that I'm referring to. Let's see if I can enlarge that. We've broken this down by category. All of the items that I've mentioned to you are here, and there's a cost associated with them. And some of those items we are able to potentially offset within the existing budget. So in column G, you'll see some of those numbers as well. And again, I will get this document shared out with you tonight, so you'll have the exact detail. But you'll see at the bottom all of the things that I've described come to that total of $460,805. And for FY22, a level services budget would require an increase of $1,498,003, or a 4.26% increase in our overall budget. So the recommended, the appropriation for FY21 was $35,139,715, which means with the 1.31% increase and the level services increase, we would need a budget of $37,098,523 for the budget for next year, which is a large increase of 5.57. But you'll see that broken down. The 1.31 is the one-time cost that we've indicated, and the 4.26 in the level services. And we did separate the capital needs separately on the bottom as $81,400.
Susan, forgive me. I want to make sure this is, since I haven't had an opportunity to see this before this, I just want to make sure this is right. The level service, the portion of the increase that's level services, I don't think that's the 4.26%.
I'm going to ask Keith to explain that to you, but yes, because I had the same questions in Louise, because typically level services is not that high, but there are reasons that it would be that high of a percent for next year.
Okay, so we can break that down after. I don't have to dig deep tonight into this detail. Okay.
Does that include the boiler too?
No, that would be in capital, but the budget subcommittee has not seen the financials on this, so we haven't had a chance to really graze the detail. We're getting it real time.
Yeah, no, and as you know, I mean, because we presented last week trying to get this information back to you this week, but knowing that that was a short turnover, and we did try as hard as we could to get all that information sooner. I apologize that you're getting this as we speak.
That's all right. That's all right. It was a tight turnaround.
And Louise, you sound really far away. Is anyone else having trouble?
I'm sorry. I had to switch devices, so if this one isn't not good, I'll try to be louder. Susan, that's fine. I know it was a very tight turnaround, so don't worry about that. If you're finished, and I don't want to interrupt you, I did want to just add a couple of things to what you're saying. Are you done? I didn't mean to do that.
I'm done for the moment.
Susan, can you just stop sharing your screen just so we can better? Thank you.
Oh, actually, well, all right, but that actually was helpful. What I wanted to do is just first of all acknowledge and thank you for reconsidering some of the SEL supports. The budget subcommittee did have specific questions, and I think we still are going to, and we'll need to follow up. But one of them was a concern that some of the key SEL support positions that we felt, frankly, were urgent now, that we shouldn't delay them into FY23, that we're going to need the maximum sort of effort to support students and staff coming into this immediately following this year. And recognizing cost is an issue and we haven't figured out how we're paying for anything, we advocated to move up the 2 SEL positions that are slated for FY23. So I see you moved one of them. So that still have a question around the other one. So there were a couple of other things that we discussed at length, but I guess I can share those after. Would rather have the rest of the committee ask their questions at this point.
So if it's more helpful for you to see the screen, I'm fine with that. I just can't see your faces, so I can't call on people. So it's a little tricky.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. I moved through it. I wanted to point something else out, but I think we can just move on.
Well, but also for the other committee members too, who might have questions. So if that's the case, Susan, can you see everybody if you're sharing your screen?
I couldn't before, so I wasn't seeing anybody yet, but we can also send this to you. Keith, you have it as well. Do you want to share it with the school committee members for me? In case I need to put it up in the meantime, I don't want to try to do both.
So before we take any questions, I just want to thank you all and congratulate you. Oh, sorry, Keith.
I don't have editing rights, so I can't share.
Oh, okay. I'll get that out in a moment.
Just wanted to thank you all. I like this approach for this year because it's such a different, crazy year. So I just wanted to thank you all for your time and your effort in putting this together in the way that you did. I think this is a really helpful way to look at it. So I appreciate that. So committee members, I know you don't have it in front of you, but do you want to start with some questions? Anybody? Dawn?
I really appreciate everything and everyone's work to put this together, and I had an opportunity to look through all of those requests. One request that I didn't see that I just wanted to ask a little bit more about is the impact from last spring and also this year to date, the hybrid approach, the remote approach on foreign language at our elementary and our middle school. Just the decreased instructional time, the lack of face time and talking. Is there anything in here, or I guess there isn't anything in here in terms of remediation for all of those students, but is that something we can add? Is there, I guess, something to assist in remediation for foreign language for elementary and middle school for next year?
One of the things that would be very challenging, because I think we're going to see areas, multiple areas of weakness, right? But clearly in the younger levels, numeracy and literacy are critical. So that's why they're putting their efforts into tutors for those areas. I definitely can foresee that we're going to see across the board some concerns like that. If we, for example, said, let's hire some foreign languages, French, Spanish tutors, I would very likely say that we wouldn't be able to find those. We have a hard enough time finding teachers to do the tutoring. So we have a hard time even finding literacy and numeracy. So even if we were to fund some of those, it's unlikely we'd be able to find those people because they're not easy to locate, and particularly at a tutor salary as well.
So, Dawn, this question came up when the administration presented to the budget subcommittee, because it was sort of the one area which, in the world of regression, it feels like the language instruction had, our kids have been asked to, stay on point through asynchronous learning, and despite the incredible efforts by our teachers, I don't think there's any question there's going to be significant regression across the board, and particularly at the elementary level, where, for instance, kindergartners who ordinarily would have been introduced to French immersion day one are speaking English. So, there's no question we're going to have challenges, and we did bring that up with Susan and Peter and Keith last Thursday, and again on Monday. This is such an enormous concern, because I feel like languages in general are critical for a whole host of reasons, and not just so kids can learn to speak French or Spanish. It's for many, it becomes a window to the world and a cultural fluency education as well. And so I'm worried about it. I'm worried about losing kids who never will be able to regroup afterwards to the degree that they had been. Having said that, I know you have the challenge with, potentially hiring people, et cetera, but I'm wondering if this is not just about staff. It could be other programs or support systems that our existing staff could be taking advantage of. And, I've thought so much about this week, in particular, since we, first spoke about it. And it occurred to me that we haven't really stepped back to understand better what's really happening in our language instruction right now. And do we even have a way to assess how much regression we're seeing? Do we have the tools to do that? Because if we wait till next year, we're kind of too late. We almost needed a baseline in September, but I'm wondering if even that is something we should be considering. What tools do we have in place to do that? And maybe reaching out to the language educators specifically in getting them together in some sort of a brainstorm on this before it's too late, to understand, like, is there more we could do that may not be just about tutors or what have you, and see what that's like. I would love to have Dominique Playtin come talk to us about, sort of his inside view of this and what's really going on with it. And that isn't to say that you haven't all had some of these discussions, but things are moving quickly. I know numeracy and literacy is a priority in many respects, but I think it sort of misses the opportunity to address this head on before, another 6 months pass. So I'd love to see us dig a little bit deeper on it, if that's at all possible.
Yes, and I know Dominique has been meeting with, in fact, I think very recently, Dr. Slaney and I were just talking about this today, that Dominique is meeting with individual principals as well to have those conversations. So that conversation will be continuing and be ongoing. And if he has recommendations, he will be having those with the principals as well.
Okay. And are the actual teachers being reached out to consult with them on their very specific frontline view of what might help?
I can't answer that part, and I know he started with the principal, so I don't think they've had that yet, but I'm sure that will be incorporated into that discussion. If any principal wants to weigh in on that, feel free.
Okay. I just encourage that to happen before we get to the point where we've priced everything out and we're trying to prioritize and we still need to understand that.
Yep, and they're hearing you, and I know that they will be doing that work.
Okay. Thank you.
So committee members, any questions or feedback?
I did share it, so hopefully you got it by email, which will have the links to the updated budget sheet as well.
So Stacy, if there aren't any further questions right now, the other thing to just know as a matter of process, what we're going to do next week's vacation week. So nothing is scheduled for next week, but the budget subcommittee is going to meet the following week with Dr. Kuska and Keith and Peter to take a second look at this. Maybe perhaps by then there might be, some other tweaks and revisions to it. It'll give us a chance to dig a little bit deeper into the numbers and then look at the overall impact more precisely. And we'll come back to the committee with a recommendation on where to go. I think it's that meeting, that would be before the next school committee meeting. So we should be able to do that at the next school committee meeting.
Right, understood. But just wanted to take questions now or any recommendations that the committee felt was important to think about. Sorry, Sin, to think about.
No, nothing. I was just going to say thank you to the administrators. I reached out to everybody to ask them my specific questions, so I didn't have anything further on that. And then also, Anne Louise, when you have after you have your meeting with the budget subcommittee, can you send us that recommendation before we have our next meeting so that we can look at it, if at all possible, before the meeting on the 25th?
I will do my best. I got to look at, I think we're meeting Wednesday and the right before that. So
okay.
That's tight, but it may not be codified specifically that way, but yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, to be honest, Cynthia, we're just getting this, so nothing's coming in advance. Okay.
Well, right. So typically, this is Susan's opportunity tonight to share her recommendation. We can provide some feedback, and the budget subcommittee will then take our feedback and come back to us with the recommendation. I'm comfortable with what I see here. I watched the meeting and I read through the documents. I'm trusting that you're sharing with us what you think the critical needs are. And I appreciate that. And I trust that, as educators, what's best for our kiddos. So I'm quite comfortable with what I have seen to date.
I thought that number would have been higher. So, to be honest.
So, Catherine, I'm going to put you on the spot. This is your first go around with the budget. Do you have any questions or anything about the process where it's your first?
I don't. I mean, it's sort of like when you see the presentation, you think all of this makes sense to me. I have the utmost faith that this is not coming off the cuff for anyone, that this has all been really well thought through and thought out, and that in a situation like we're in right now, that you have put the time and effort and forethought into asking for what you're asking for. So it makes perfect sense to me.
Dawn?
No additional questions or comments beyond just the concern about foreign language.
Okay. And Andy, Lisa, you're all in budget. So Sin, you got nothing. All right. Well, thank you for that. And we look forward to the budget subcommittee's recommendation. Administrators, thank you so much for joining us. But we're going to go into boring board business. So good to see you, but good night.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank them all, because I have to say this team has been phenomenal. I mean, as I mentioned, when we started the reopening plan, who knew where we'd be? And we pulled it off because the team has been committed and they were committed to this process as well. And I really have valued their input in this process, which again is a change from the past. And also I'm a new player on the team. So thank you to all of them.
No, you're right. And I think, we need to take a moment and remember to celebrate the successes. And here we are entering the second semester of the year, and it has been a bumpy roller coaster, like an upside down one that I don't really love to sit in, but we've made it through, and we're in it together, and we're making some mistakes along the way, but we're going to learn and grow. And I'm so thankful that my children have been in school literally since September. So thank you all.
They are your champions.
So thank you all now. Good night. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right. So Dawn, where are you, Dawn? There you are. Do you want to share your screen and share the resolution about the vaccinations?
Okay, so there are 3 resolutions, and I just wanted to speak a little bit about it first. There was a resolution put out, I want to say it was Hadley, it could have been Hanover, but it was regarding vaccination for teachers and the prioritization of that. And I took that one, I modified it slightly. I also thought there's another piece to that's important. And that is, if you were to go on right now and look at the times that vaccinations are available, they're available 9 to 5, 8 to 6, and not a ton of weekend times. No. And I'm wondering why we wouldn't ask for designated times just for educators on the weekends or extended evening hours, because when these open up and they're going to want to get their vaccination as soon as possible, it would be nice to have times earmarked, extended hours, evenings and weekends just for educators. They did the impossible. They went back in, they're with our students for 6 hours or more each day. So it sort of, I took the Hadley or Hanover one and modified it. So I'll present that. Cece, you had reached out regarding one that Framingham had, and I have to say I have mixed feelings on it. Framingham has a resolution for graduating high school seniors to be put on the prioritization list. And that's the Framingham School Committee's resolution. And it's because the idea that if they wait until April or June, and it takes 5 or 6 weeks to have immunity by that time, that's their senior year. It's nearly over. I'm a little mixed on it, because when I hear it, I also think about right now, we have 13 years of students, and we have the capacity to get juniors and seniors, or really kids 16 and up, which is most of our sophomore class, plus juniors and seniors vaccinated, and back in earlier than that we could open up more time on learning and change what the rest of this school year looks like. Because as of right now, the Massachusetts plan has those kids eligible sometime between April and June, and again, it's 5 to 6 weeks. So I guess what I would say is, I looked at the Framingham one, I kind of wondered, why is it just limited to seniors? What if we expanded it to all students 16 and up? But more importantly, I wanted to present the teacher one first. So if I have, let me make sure I have this.
Hey, Dawn, can I just say that I think one of the reasons why we couldn't say 16 and up is because there's only one vaccine right now that's approved for 16 and up. And you don't necessarily get a choice. Like when you go to get your vaccine, they just give you what they have. It's not like you can choose, I want Pfizer or Moderna
Well, I disagree to the extent that you can search the Mass COVID site and it'll tell you, and I can send you an app on it, but it'll tell you we have Moderna or we have Pfizer. So if you know they have Pfizer, you go to that one.
Right.
I do think there are places that you could, go to it. But okay, let me share screen.
And the Framingham one, though, came from MASC. I sent you the...
Yeah, MASC had one, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one from Amherst too, Dawn. I couldn't get to it, though. Did you see one in Amherst?
The resolution, all of the resolutions I saw came from MASC.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's starting to share. Yep. Okay.
And let me see. Okay. How should we do this? Do I read it out loud?
Dawn, you know what you should do is increase the percentage on the text, or so it'll fill the screen more.
Okay.
You can do that too on your end too. So
I know. There's other.
So I'm sorry. You want me to increase the font? No. You want me to?
Not the font. If you go up to your view percentage, and it'll make the document larger, so that anyone else forget about us.
Oh,
lower right-hand corner where it says 100% down there. There's a plus and minus.
Oh, got it. Thanks, guys. Do you want me to read it out loud?
sure.
Okay. Whereas as of February 10th, 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has infected over 27.3 million individuals in the U.S. and has resulted in more than 471,000 deaths across the country and 15,207 in Massachusetts. And whereas our strong public education system, which is essential to the individual and community well-being of our society, is facing unprecedented challenges due to the coronavirus pandemic and lack of clear national, state, and local direction or resources. These challenges include, but are not limited to, the academic and social emotional toll on students, as well as the need to rapidly pivot to distance learning, clean and equip school facilities to adapt to new health protocols and social distancing, assess and address the risk to teachers, staff, and students, and whereas widespread mask wearing, social distancing, and hand washing are scientifically proven to help prevent the coronavirus infections, and whereas although COVID testing and contact tracing currently the only effective strategy available to slow the coronavirus spread prior to the FDA-approved COVID-19 vaccine becoming more available, it is insufficient to support the public education system in our country. And whereas vaccines are proven to be the most effective strategy to reduce and eliminate the spread of infectious disease and are an important and necessary tool for eradicating disease, and whereas a free and open K-12 public education system is integral to the functioning of our community, the inability to safely, fully reopen schools could compromise the long-term educational outcomes for many students, especially our most vulnerable students, the mental and physical health of many students, the lives and livelihoods of many families in our community, and the local and state economy. The full extent of the ripple effects of an inability to safely, fully reopen schools are significant, and whereas given the unique and critical role that our K-12 public education system plays in the functioning of our community, society, and our democracy, it is critical that teachers and K-12 staff be prioritized in the distribution of a COVID-19 vaccine to diminish a significant challenge to fully reopening schools. And whereas the Mass Department of Public Health is currently planning a COVID-19 vaccination plan that has teachers prioritized in Group 3 of Phase 2, and as of February 11, 2021, K-12 staff have not yet become eligible for vaccination. Whereas, as of February 11, 2021, the following states have already prioritized K-12 teachers for COVID vaccines, such that vaccinations for K-12 teachers are available in, I won't read them all, but it's 26 states. Be it resolved that Holliston School Committee calls on the state legislature, the governor, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health to include all K-12 school personnel as a top priority following healthcare workers and long-term care residents for access to a COVID-19 vaccine. Be it further resolved that Holliston School Committee calls on the state legislature, the governor, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health to designate weekend hours and extended evening hours solely for vaccine distribution for all K-12 school personnel as a top priority for access to a COVID-19 vaccine. Be it further resolved that the Holliston School Committee calls on the Massachusetts Association of School Committees to publicly advocate for public school educators to be prioritized among essential workers who are given access to an approved COVID-19 vaccine. Do you want me to continue to screen share?
No, for that resolution, no, I think I'm ready to sign it. Lisa?
Can we say pre-K to 12?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good.
I'm not sure whether we need to say, well, I mean, I suppose we could say that I'm concerned about us saying that we'll have designated hours just for educators, because I think part of our problem with our rollout is that we're making our silos so small that it's like we should be getting people, as soon as we get like 1 million vaccines being sent a week, 1 million should be gone. Like by the end of that week, it should be like, we should be using them up. And right now we're not doing that because we've prioritized these very narrow cohorts and a narrow field. Gillette could be open 24/7. There's like no reason why we couldn't for many, many weeks just be like, I would go at midnight to get a vaccine at Gillette.
Maybe it's just extended hours to accommodate.
Yeah, that would be fine. But I just don't know if we have to, to accommodate them. Yeah, because they work from, 7 to 4 or whatever. It's crazy. So does everybody else.
But extended hours to accommodate school personnel.
But I just don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't be out. Like Gillette should be staffed 24/7. They're able to do this in other countries. They're able to do it in other places. They're doing it in New York City. They can do it here.
They are doing it in New York City.
We don't sleep either. I know they don't sleep, but we don't either. And none of us are now. That's for sure. I'd go at 2 a.m. Who's taking a road trip with me? I mean, when I'm eligible. I'm not eligible yet.
I shared a letter with you that the Tri-County superintendents, we all signed and sent to Governor Baker as well, just so you can see some of that activism. But my biggest concern is not only releasing it to educators, but we had a plan in place. We were ready to go with 2 neighboring towns that if we could get the vaccine, we would have gotten done. We had a plan that we were going to get it done aggressively at a time when our staff was available. And unfortunately, it sounds like that's not going to be an option unless they change their thinking like they did with first responders. So that's a frustrating thing too, because as you said, I'm worried about if staff have to go during the day, but also if they get sick and if they have to log on like everybody else to get an appointment, how do they do that when they're teaching all day? So we really are setting ourselves up for failure here.
Right. And especially when, like right now, not except for the Johnson & Johnson one, the other vaccines are 2 vaccines, 2 shots for the vaccine to be effective. And a lot of people reporting with the second shot, including family members of mine, that second shot is actually like kind of puts you down for the count for a good 24 to 36 hours. So they're going to need to have some recuperation from that just to even get the vaccine. Or they at least have to allot for that time. I mean, I don't think I would advocate that they would get it done on like a Friday or a Saturday and be able to have the time to do that. So,
any questions about the actual resolution though? Because I'd like to get a motion on the floor to get that passed or not.
I just have sort of a point of order. Once we pass something like this, who does it go to? Do we send it to our state legislators, and who all does it go to?
So I was going to say, like the other resolution that we passed over the summer or whenever it was, it went to Senator Spilka's office, Rep. Dykema's office, and then they went ahead and I asked them to forward it to the right people at DESE as well, just to have our.
But do we send it to Governor Baker as well and Catherine Clark?
They do through Karen's office.
Okay.
Our resolution from last September asking for funding for COVID testing, I don't think we included Governor Baker and MASC on it, but I think we can, and it's modeled off of one that did.
I think we should.
Yeah, I think we should send it and send it to Catherine Clark is a good idea too. I don't think we always think of our federal legislators. They're so far away.
Warren as well, yeah.
But yeah, we probably should. I mean, if we're going to advocate, let's advocate.
Let's send it to Michelle Walensky from CDC.
You know, Susan brings up a really interesting point about the practicality of trying to do this out. Like, it's infinitely more practical trying to pull this off at a local level.
Catherine's an RN. She can give everybody shots. Right, Catherine? She's ready to go.
Got it. No, it's like our local flu clinics. We get the whole darn town done in a day.
Yeah.
But I mean, as this is written, I think it's, the point of it is it shows, even if you don't even get into the detail, that we want educators to be a priority because they aren't right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going to get into the mechanics of it, I'm wondering if we should be advocating for, if possible, a local plan for this. It might make it easier for the state to get on board, actually, if the local
if localities took it on as a responsibility. I don't know. It's just a thought. I don't want to add more time to the discussion. But
I think that's a great idea. We could add in one more, be it further resolved, and talk about a local collaborative with other schools and local distribution of the vaccine, and collaborate with other schools. I mean, Susan, is there anything else we can help you with in terms of reaching out for that? I think we probably saw Senator Karen Spilka's message about advocating for more local vaccine sites, and that they're now doing the Natick Mall. Mm-hmm. So is there an opportunity here for us to be reaching out to Carolyn Dykema and Karen Spilka and advocating for a collaborative with 2 or 3 other school districts and having it be a drive-through local vaccination clinic? What was the impediment, I guess?
I think just the way they rolled it out. I mean, if they went back to the approach that they did with the first responders and allowed districts to towns to collaborate, there are many towns that have done it before and would do it again. We really had what I consider a very rigorous model in place, ready to go if they released the vaccines to the town that was chairing this for us. So I guess that just really encouraged them to allow that collaborative approach and regional approach would be really helpful.
Was that Natick, Susan? That was the coordinating town? Was it Natick?
No, it's Framingham.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
So maybe this is, I'm not going to phrase this exactly right, but be it resolved that the state or whatever it is, Board of Health or whatever, releases supplies to communities for the creation or, for distribution through local collaboratives as the most effective, efficient way to manage distribution for educators or something to that effect. You'd have to polish that, Dawn. I don't know. I can't do it without typing it.
Would that be appropriate to go through the Department of Health, like our local Department of Health, or no? No.
Possibly. I know that I was sent a link to a meeting tomorrow about vaccinations. So if I get information tomorrow, I'll share that, because I'm hoping they'll give us an update through that meeting as well.
Because that's normally where the flu vaccine goes through, is our Department of Health, correct?
I believe so, because the Board of Health in the town would be receiving would be filling out the application. I believe it's through the Department of Health.
Yeah. So we'd be asking for the state to release the vaccine supply to local boards of health for the most effective
distribution,
local distribution. And whether it's a collaborative or not, I think is irrelevant for the solution.
Yeah,
but something to that effect.
Or alternatively, now that there is CVS or Walgreens or different private groups that are running this, we had a very successful flu distribution program.
That is true.
And we could also, in addition, pressure for a group like CVS to be released another 1,000 vaccines if they will work with educators for local distribution, right? Set something up.
That's a good idea, yeah. Or Walgreens, was it CVS and Walgreens that both have a deal with the government? Yeah.
Okay. So how about this? Do we want to, because I know you need to work a little bit on it, Dawn, to add that other resolve. Do we want to agree, make a vote on the resolution with
amendments?
With amendments,
With an amendment that specifically addresses local distribution, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then voting, okay, second by Dawn.
So moved.
So moved by Cynthia, seconded by Dawn, all in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yeah.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Enthusiastic, yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. That passes. So Dawn, thank you for that. And as soon as you send it to me, I will get that off to everyone, to the world, and we'll get it
to everybody.
As to the two solutions regarding students 16 and up and the one that's more mirrors the Framingham School Committee resolution for prioritizing the class of 2021. Do you want me to distribute that via email and you consider it, and then we meet again on February 25th?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks, Dawn.
Great. Thank you. All right, thank you, Dawn. She and I happened to be apparently reading the email at the same time, and I sent it to her as she was just starting to work through it. So thank you for that. Okay, let's back up to our meeting minutes. So Lisa has been working to catch up on all of our many meeting minutes. So she said to me, she is she's doing some from the summer and then some from now, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we will have closed the gap and all of our meeting minutes will be done. But I appreciate everyone's patience. This is a lot of work and a lot of time, and we're meeting a lot, so appreciate that. So why don't we start with the executive session minutes? Okay, the first one I have is
and these will be retained, right, Stacy?
yes. You know what, was October 2nd one of them? I think my printer, I think I missed one. Yes, so October 2nd executive session. Any questions, comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve executive session October 2nd, 2020, for which we will retain?
Moved by Cynthia.
Seconded by Andy.
Moved by Cynthia, seconded by Andy. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead? Oh, Ann Louise, you know what? Can you come a little closer to your machine?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. October 29th, executive session 2020. Any questions, comments, edits? Anything? Is there a motion to approve October 29th, 2020 executive session for which we will retain?
Moved by Cynthia.
Seconded by Catherine.
Moved by Cynthia, seconded by Catherine. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. And December 3rd, executive session. Is there a motion to, are there any questions, comments, edits? No? Okay, is there a motion to approve December 3rd, 2020 executive session for which we will retain?
Moved by Lisa.
Seconded by Catherine.
Moved by Lisa, seconded by Catherine. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
I have to abstain on that one.
Yep. Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes, sorry. Thank you. Okay, regular session, August 6th. I was at the beach on August 6th. When I read that, I was like, I know where I was at that moment. Oh, man.
I have a comment on that one.
Yes.
In the minutes of that, we are approving minutes of that. In that, we're approving minutes for something else. And I think it's a amalgamation of Ms. Savard and Dr. Savard, but it actually says Mr. Savard.
Where is it, Catherine?
It's right where we're, I just lost the document. It's the August 6th one, right when we're approving the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, it does say Mr. Savard.
Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. We will have Lisa fix that. Oh, geez. Dr. Mr.
Whatever.
Is.
It's all the same.
Right. Just don't call me late for dinner. All right, any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the August 6, 2020 school committee meeting minutes?
Moved by Catherine.
Seconded by Andy.
Moved by Catherine, seconded by Andy. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. Thank you. January 7th, 20, actually, let me go the other way. January 7th, 2021. Any questions, comments, edits? Okay, is there a motion to approve them?
Moved by Cynthia. Whoops.
Moved by Lisa, seconded by Cynthia. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. And January 21st, 2021. Are there any questions, comments, changes? Nope. With that, is there a motion to approve the January 21st, 2021 school committee meeting minutes?
Moved by Catherine.
Seconded by Cynthia.
Moved by Catherine, seconded by Cynthia. Roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
She wasn't there.
Same.
Yep.
I can
Just looking at it right at the top.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yeah.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. Great. Thank you. Okay.
I was checking all of them for Mr. Savard.
Okay. Cynthia, do you want to
Yes. Hold on.
go through policy?
Sure. So we're doing the second reading of policy. Sorry, I'm trying to open it. JLCB. It's a second reading. We had a couple of questions from the first reading, and one was from, I believe it was from Andy, about whether or not someone had to have, for the religious exemption, whether they needed to have a note or something from a priest or rabbi or some other religious representative, and the answer from Andy Waugh is no. So I will take that as a no. And the only other things that are not on your copy tonight, because for some reason I might have sent the wrong one to Lisa, which is, it's just a minor change. It's not substantive, but there was like it says in the first paragraph, parent or guardian. It was supposed to be parent/guardian, but there's no other change than that. And then obviously from the first reading, there was also, the state had required us to have a flu vaccine by the end of December, and then they rescinded that. So we just canceled it off the policy. So there's no requirement for the flu vaccine this year. So I do have to read it all in full though. So I'm going to do that, and I'll try to be as quickly as I can. Okay. Immunization of students, JLCB. In an effort to ensure a healthy and safe environment for students and staff, students entering the Holliston Public Schools, HPS, for the first time, whether at kindergarten or through transfer from another school district, will be required to present a physician certificate attesting to immunization against communicable diseases as may be specified from time to time by the Department of Health. The only exception to these requirements will be made on receipt of a written statement from a doctor that immunization would not be in the best interests of the child, or by the student's parent/guardian, stating that vaccination or immunization is contrary to the religious beliefs of the student or parent guardian. Please note the legal reference of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 76, Section 15, detailed below. No child, and I have to leave it the way it's written because it's quoted from Mass General Law, so I can't change like the non-sexist language or whatever. So, no child shall, except as hereinafter provided, be admitted to school except upon presentation of a physician's certificate that the child has been successfully immunized against diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, measles, and poliomyelitis, and such other communicable diseases as may be specified from time to time by the Department of Public Health. A child shall be admitted to the school upon certification by a physician that he has personally examined such child and that, in his opinion, the physical condition of the child is such that his health would be endangered by such vaccination or by any of such immunizations. Such certification shall be submitted at the beginning of each school year to the physician in charge of the school health program. If the physician is in charge of the school health program does not agree with the opinion of the child's physician, the matter shall be referred to the Department of Public Health, whose decision will be final. In the absence of emergency or epidemic of disease declared by the Department of Public Health, no child whose parent, sorry, that should have said slash. No, I can't change it, sorry. Just wanted to change it. Parent or guardian states in writing that vaccination or immunization conflicts with his sincere religious beliefs shall be required to present said physician's certificate in order to be admitted to school. And there ends the reading. I would entertain any questions or a motion to approve and move and waive the third reading.
Eloise?
So wait, Cynthia, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This, you said, forgive me on this. Is this our current policy or is this the one that was handed down by the state that we're?
This was a new policy that's a standalone about immunization. We didn't have this policy currently, but we should. Per Lynn Bowler. So that's why this policy mirrors the MASC policy. And the only thing that we did was take the Mass General Law, Chapter 76, Section 15, and detail it in the policy for people to see because it references it, but it doesn't actually say it out specifically. So that's the only thing we did.
Maybe what I'm remembering, let me back up. So yes, absolutely change the he's and the hises and the whatevers.
I can't actually do that. That was one of the things I kept wanting to do, but because it's in Mass General Law, I can't change what they've written.
Okay, that's horrifying.
I know. That's what I'm sitting here going like his physician, you know what I mean? Like I can't change the non-sexist language because that's how it's written in the law. I mean, at some point, if they update it, then we'll change it. What's that?
Okay. So, but you can't change parent to parent guardian.
Yes, that's up above. That's what we wrote, but that mirrors what MASC's guidance policy has. And then we just added the legal reference and put it in the policy, but this is exactly as it's written. So I can't change it as a quote. Do you get what I'm saying?
Totally get it.
Okay.
Yeah. The actual question or observation I had is that I vaguely recall a year ago reviewing a policy that I thought was this, but I think what it might have been related to was athletics. And there was this caveat that a student could present their immunizations. There was something like 30 days. And I remember thinking, that's uncomfortable.
Oh, I know what it was for. It was for
that's
foster.
Pre-pandemic.
You know what? I think it was like foster kid. It was for either foster kids or military families. That's like whatever their law says. So it supersedes whatever this says. So it just said.
Was that the law? Was that?
Yes, it was. That was part of the law. Yeah.
Okay.
So and that doesn't necessarily mean that the student hasn't been immunized. It just means that they're giving them time to actually get that over to the school. And that's by law. It's about homeless. It was about homeless. I believe it was about homeless students, to be honest.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think I do remember the military piece. So they were definitely.
They were all like in the same like vein because that came from a tiered monitor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. It was an audit. It was a special education audit, and that's where those were brought up by Meg Canary at the time, and so those were kind of come all as a cluster together. But yeah, they're all based on the law. We couldn't change them.
Thank you for reminding me. It was like a vague thing back there that we have talked about in immunizations before.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Any other questions or update or edits? Okay, so first, is there a motion to approve?
I think to waive the third reading.
Yeah. Is there a motion to waive the third reading?
by Andy.
Seconded by Lisa.
Moved by
No.
Okay, whatever.
Okay, moved by Andy, seconded by Lisa, I think, maybe not. All in favor, Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Ms. Koshin,
Yes.
Dr. Savard,
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead,
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik,
Yes.
Ms. Naborski,
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. Is there a motion to approve policy JLCB, immunization of students?
Yes.
I think Anne Louise said yes. Seconded by Cynthia.
Moved by Anne Louise, seconded by Cynthia. All in favor, Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Ms. Koshin,
Yes.
Dr. Savard,
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead,
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik,
Yes.
Ms. Naborski,
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes.
And I'll just send this copy that I just did with that slight change to Lisa now.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention.
Sam, why don't you just, we'll jump right into reports from subcommittees. Do you want to share out about policy?
Oh, yeah. So, well, we're trying to schedule another meeting for the 22nd, or well, somewhere in there, the 22nd, 23rd. We haven't done it yet to discuss. There's some new guidance that came out from the CDC regarding face coverings, and we just want to know. Well, we may not have to make a change, but we want to talk about it before the next meeting, so that if we have to make an update in that policy, we can. Otherwise, our next regular meeting is scheduled for March 9th at 1 p.m.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent's evaluation.
I need to send Dr. Kuska an email to talk about what that process is going to look like. So I'll do that next week, and I will have more information about the process at our next meeting.
Awesome. Lisa, communications?
Yeah, I think we just need to get a meeting on the books. We don't really have, we never really set who our communication subcommittee even is. Is it Catherine, me, and Dawn?
Yeah, I think we were just switching out Catherine with
Joan. Okay. So yeah, I think we need to get some kind of meeting on the books. Maybe we'll try for the week or two after vacation.
And then do you want to talk about setting up some coffee hours for budget?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have to do that. And can we put newsletter back on the agenda? Just keep it as a placeholder?
Yeah, honestly, I thought it was, but made some changes. So yeah, did you have something that you were ready?
No, but I think as budget season percolates, I think we're probably going to want to do a couple of newsletters around that.
Yep. I didn't think I was going to reach out and see if you had something for this week, but I figured you might not have had time to put something together.
I think there's been so much going on that things are happening so quickly. It's really hard for us to communicate with the newsletter because by the time we have a chance to vote on it, it's old news. So, but with the budget, I think that will at least be sort of more like pre-COVID days. That is what it is.
Yeah. So Lisa, maybe we can strive to get, even if it's super short, a newsletter out at the next school committee meeting that has recommended hours in it, because I've already had a number of parents reach out asking about how they can engage and learn more about budget and what's going on with it this year. And I think the office hours are obviously going to be some Zoom sessions. So, which frankly, I bet we'll get more participation that way, because it's always been a challenge getting people to come. It'll be very interesting to see. So if that's effective, I actually think that could be delightful. So we'll see. We should talk about how we manage that, but I think that'll be something. If we'd have to get it into the newsletter for the 25th, I think is our next meeting. So that, because anything would have to be hosted right after that, because we're running out of time fast on the calendar.
Yeah. Yep. And anything from a budget point, Anne Louise, did you want to add anything else for budget?
No, just our next meeting will be the 24th, I believe. It's the Wednesday, the 24th, if I'm correct. It's that Wednesday right after vacation.
What time is it on the 24th?
I thought we settled on 11. Is Keith still here?
Keith is saying yes. He's given thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going
Great.
to do a whole meeting where I don't speak, so just,
Well, you almost made it. Okay. And then warrants. So a school bill warrant in the amount of $288,841.88, of which $6,884 were categorized under COVID. Another school bill warrant was signed in the amount of $35,925.58, of which $8,870 was categorized under COVID expenses. There was a cafeteria bill warrant in the amount of $13,038.36, of which $189.71 was categorized under COVID. And there was a student activity replenishment warrant for the high school for $9,375.92. So those are all the bills that have been signed. And Keith? No, you're on mute.
but I didn't hear what I just said. There was one that I missed in that note that I sent you, and you can even see you signed it. It's a school bill warrant in the amount of $246,097.94, of which $775 is related to COVID.
Great, thank you.
With a COVID total of these bills of $16,718.71.
Thank you so much, Keith.
Great, thank you. Okay, next meeting date is February 25th. On it, we will be talking about budget, superintendent evaluation process. We will possibly have a newsletter to vote. We will possibly have some resolutions to vote on. And of course, we will be talking about COVID and get an update on the fall 2 sports and any updates from the athletic department for that. Is there anything else, Susan, Keith, Peter, Peter, would you like to give an update next time on the PD day that was yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah.
Think about it, no pressure. I know I totally put you on the spot, but you have a week and a half if you want to do it.
Yeah, I can give it then. I think we had it down as like I would do the February and March together, but either way is fine.
No, okay, let's go with that. That's fine. I'm not trying to add to your
either way is fine.
Your plate. So we'll see where we're at the time of the posting in the meeting. Okay, with that said, any other questions, comments? Well, I wish the educators and all the families just a relaxing week. I hope that you enjoy some family time, read a good book, watch a good Netflix show, go out in the snow, just be safe. Take some time to, celebrate the good things that are going on and relax. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved by Cynthia. Anybody? Nobody wants to leave, I guess. I think we have to keep going, Stacy.
Moved by Cynthia. Who seconded it? Lisa. All in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Motion?
Yes.
Sorry. Dr. Savard?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. Thank you all very much. Peter,
Thank you all.
Susan, Keith, thank you. Have a nice, restful vacation. Good night.
# stay home all.